goes this. There goes that. And we're live.
Welcome back. Thank you for hanging out with us. Big Tech has not canceled us yet. We are live on the air. Episode 383 of the IT in the D Show, broadcasting live from our quarantined homes. This is Bob the Sales Guy. That is Dave the Geek. Randy, I do the censored internet name, is doing the censored internet name.
Right.
Find us online. You can't say that word anymore. Find us online at itinthed.com, where you can find all the things. Give us a like on the socials and subscribe to us everywhere fine podcasts are sold.
Yeah, and hey, we have there's still no events, although I mean, we might as well dive right in, because one of the stories that we're going to talk about may have some impact on this. Allegedly, things are going to relax a little bit on February 1st. We are looking at doing a free podcast day that first weekend of the month, assuming everything happens the way it's supposed to happen and things go. To some degree, we're going to see how it goes. And who knows, maybe after a year, we'll be able to have an event here again.
Yeah, my little birdie was wrong last week, so I deeply apologize for anyone that got their hopes up that they could go to their corner bars this weekend. So,
last weekend, yeah.
Yeah, another 2 weeks of suspense. And
did the groundhog see its shadow, or I guess I'm not sure.
Who knows?
Did the groundhog get its takeout order? Maybe that's how that works.
Maybe someone has to get paid off. Who knows? You know how all that stuff works.
I do, unfortunately.
I want to start with the bomb, because if you have been following anything that's going on in big tech, it's getting a little nutty. The stuff that's going on, and I just like to read this quick tweet. I said it. I shouldn't have, but it's. Can we beep that out? By the way, that's our new 4-letter word.
We're not going to say the things anymore.
The TW word. Yeah. Ahead of the Ugandan election, we're hearing reports that internet service providers are being ordered to block social media and messaging apps. We strongly condemn internet shutdowns that are hugely harmful, violate basic human rights and the principles of the hashtag open internet.
Yeah.
As they shut down 70,000 accounts. I think it's up to more now. So here's the best part. Internet sleuths, as they are sleuthy, and they go digging and they find things.
They are sleuthing?
They're sleuthing and they go find things. Shall we go through a few of them, by the way? Hashtag kill cops, hashtag death to cops. Hundreds and thousands of accounts and that hashtag being used. Hashtag death to, hashtag kill the, insert your favorite race or religion or creed or color, and thousands and tens of thousands of accounts and hashtags being used everywhere that are still active and still being used, and nothing, I'm just saying, when I talk about consistency, I don't mind if you do that, but you have to do this. Like, you can't, when you're picky choosy, you don't make friends. Like, you make people do stuff.
Well, I mean, it's like we were just talking about with the health department and all of the, is it outdoor seating? Is it not outdoor seating? Is it open? Is it not open? Is it safe? Is it not safe? Is it this? Is it that?
Don't let me eat at the airport and the casino if I can't eat at my corner diner.
Right.
Like, either do or you don't. And this is the same situation where if you want to pull the plug on all threats, cool, go do it. But I think I'm going to go back to last week and I'm going to up my number. I think that the person that was banned from Twitter, from the TW word, I slipped. I have to beat that out.
You can't do it.
I think it was over 1 million reports a tweet. I want to say at minimum.
Yeah, I think I know I had read 500,000. I don't know.
I said 500,000 last week, and I upped that from 250,000. But I think I'm up to 1 million. And then whoever the CEO name of that unnamed company was caught on tape saying we're concentrating on one account and we're just at the beginning. So I mean, it's like this it's weird. It's a weird thing going on right now. GoDaddy dropped AR15.com.
I hadn't heard that. That's interesting.
Like, GoDaddy's doing it now. So it's kind of like, is there, are they going to have to pull up and go start an ISP in the Cayman Islands? You know what I mean?
Or they'll just go where Parler has now gone, where,
I haven't followed. Where did they go?
I forget what the name of the provider is, but
It's the same host that's hosting like Gab and
yeah, it's
some
the
other.
same one. I just don't remember the name.
Is it Epic or something like that?
Yeah, it might be
EPIK.
Epic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it's and that's the thing. I mean, there are options out there. And I think I've seen it posted a couple times now, and it kind of says it best, where, you know, if if no one in the world wants your money, you might be the problem. That's something to
Well, if
really
it's
seriously consider.
dude, it's 5 companies. This isn't like no one in the world. It's 5 companies. Like it's
So okay, I mean, well, like in the case of Parler, you know, you're backed by a dude with cajillions of dollars. I mean, this is his little private pet project. Go build it. If you're that committed, go build your own Amazon Web Services. Go do. Have fun.
yeah. You know, I think they said they were going to. Or it's gonna,
It's cool, and you know, and that's, you know, more power to you. You know, if there's truly,
Well,
you know, and that's
so my point comes back to what they got shut down for. Like Twitter has, I did it again, has far surpassed by the thousands of the things that were said.
I get it, but I mean, to their point, you know, at some point in time, the internet's a big place, you know, and it's, you know, one of those things where, you know, okay, let's tackle, you know, it's triage, you know, let's tackle the worst problem that we can first, and then maybe move on to other things, you know, if once that's handled. I mean, so I mean,
Well,
I'm not saying you're wrong, because I mean, you're right. I mean, consistency is a very key thing, but I understand. I mean, you know, you look at all the reports that, you know, fake news and you know, these bullshit conspiracy theory articles and that kind of crap are down 70% since they banned them. You know, so okay, maybe that really is a good thing.
that's not a bad thing. Like
Yeah.
again, you know, I don't want to see that shit spread either. Like, you know, stupid memes and dumb, you know.
So like I said, I mean, it's, you know, I understand and respect the balancing act that they try to walk. I'll put it that way. You know,
But I mean, it's a very hard precedent right now, because right now you and a bunch of people are cheering and you're saying yay because it's not you. But what happens when it's you? Do you follow what I'm saying?
no, I get they came for whoever, and I cheered because it wasn't me. I get that, but you know,
Because there's a lot of people neanering, and there's a lot of people, you know, because see, this is how stupid it's getting. Now you have a ISP in Idaho that's like, I'm going to block Facebook and Twitter.
So,
now,
okay, so that's an interesting one. I was actually talking with somebody about that last week. So they issued a press release saying they were going to block Facebook and Twitter, and then they backed off that because of net neutrality, carrier laws, rules, and regulations. And so they said, well, okay, no. Well, now we're only going to block it for people that request that we block it. Well, if you're going to request that they block it, why don't you just not effing go there?
just not go there. Yeah.
And then they backed off even that, and they're not blocking it from their actual customers, only their free public Wi-Fi. So you're sitting in your home, fine. You're at the coffee shop, you can't get to.
That's like me announcing I'm banning mushrooms. And that's like people in Michigan last year saying they're banning Chick-fil-A when there isn't one within 1,000 miles. Right. Great, go ban it. You can't even go there.
Exactly. Just don't go. It's, you know, but I mean, that's the, you know, that's, and this, oh, you know, we were flooded with requests by customers to ban it. No, you weren't. No, I mean, first off, you're in rural Idaho and you don't have.
I'm Idaho.
Hey, it's right, Idaho. So no, you were not banned. Yeah, not yeah.
It's just, this is going to be interesting to follow and watch, because like, again, when you have, I don't want to say they're colluding, but they're all in cahoots to like ban the people they don't like. And again, it's like,
see, I mean, dude, I'll even take it a step further. I don't think you're looking at it through the proper lens. It's not that they're banning someone that they don't like. It's that they are very well aware that Section 230 is going to come under review this year. And so they are, and that's the, you know, the whole, that's the legislation that says, you know, you as a carrier are protected from, you know, the content that your users post on your networks, that kind of stuff. So it's a shield for the Facebooks, the Twitters, the whoever of the world. And they're damn well and good aware that that's going to come under review this year. And so they are all, I would say, trying to line up on the side of the incoming administration so that they look good to them, since it is them, or it is they, who will be doing that review and doing that process and doing, you know, whatever tweaks or changes come to mind.
Which is what every corporation does.
Exactly.
He's the king of it. They've been doing it since Reagan.
Exactly. So I mean, it's but I think honestly, I truly like I have very little doubt that that's the case, and so that, you know, that's why they're focusing where they're focusing, because number one, it's let's be honest, he's an easy goddamn target at this point. I mean, he's made it. I'm like, can you really, like, was there anybody really shocked and appalled that they went, no more, you're done? What, like, was anybody really appalled, really, or I guess, or shocked when Trump got kicked off Twitter?
Nobody was.
Yeah, was anybody really shocked that happened?
He was pushing. Yeah. He's been pushing their buttons since the day he started on that.
Exactly, and more to the point, when you're on a platform, you probably shouldn't continuously threaten the platform. You know, I mean, that's just good common sense.
No, but see, again, though, do you block, do you blow Twitter out because you had some bad, you know, you blow the platform out? That's kind of my thing with Parler, even though I never used it. If you got people on there posting insightful riot shit, mean and violent shit, great, you freaking prosecute them, and you know,
but the issue was
the whole platform.
Parler was not moderating those users like that, and so
right,
that's why their hosts took it down.
Well, no, so that there was a twofold issue. One, they were moderating content, just none of that content. That was so like that was where they stepped in it. Is
so it's like the opposite of Reddit.
Exactly. Exactly.
What, you frowned upon one of our things?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
How many subreddits am I banned from? I can't even count anymore.
God only knows. But so, you know,
I wish I could see that on your profile.
Dude, it's like I wish I had if Facebook would tell you the number of people that had unfriended and or blocked you. Like,
well, they used to. Remember that Burger King promo? Unfriend 15 friends and we'll give you a free Whopper.
I would put that on a jersey tomorrow and wear it.
Randy, I'm only banned from politics. And I think I was like poking bear.
I was saying, and it's because you were you, and
I was trolling.
You were.
Yes,
being, yeah.
I too would like to put everyone that I don't agree with in a gulag and make them eat Wonder Bread sandwiches for the rest of their lives.
But just imagine all the fun that we'll have when we're dead and Microsoft turns us into chatbots.
Oh God,
wasn't that series with that? There were Pretty Blonde.
There were 2 different Black Mirror episodes about it.
No, but there was a whole series on Amazon Prime where the husband died or the boyfriend died.
Oh, Upload.
It was an Upload, yeah, where the whole thing was, you know, you have to pay like Verizon, whatever the company was.
Yeah.
And then you know, if you paid a lot of money, you got the really good land, and if you were broke, you had to sit in a shitty apartment.
In a holding cell, yeah.
I don't want chatbots of people that die. Like, you know, there's people that send me like that. I was texting my cousin, about stuff Rob used to text us, and I'm like, you know, you know, I don't want Rob talking to me, right? Calling me, creeped out that would make me.
I was gonna say it's bad enough when the memories pop up on Facebook, yeah.
Right. Hey, Bobby. Like, I don't want to talk to him. You know who I don't wish I was right now?
The guy with the internet controlled chastity belt.
No, that's gross. No, the guy that has a Bitcoin locker worth $220 million and he doesn't know the password.
And he only has 2 more attempts to try to guess what it was because he lost the piece of paper he wrote it down on.
Yeah.
Use a password manager, folks.
No, but this is before password managers were even a thing.
Back in the day, Randy, we didn't have password managers.
Yeah. In 2010,
we had notebooks.
I think because he mined.
Yeah.
In what is it, 2010 or, you know.
Yep. And it's worth 220 million and he can't get to it.
And he said he's come to grips with it. And I'm like, no, you haven't. You're jumping off a bridge.
Yeah, there's no way you're coming to grips with effectively losing 220.
No, you're sitting in a corner and you're rocking. The crazy thing is, though, of the 18.5 million Bitcoin that are in existence right now, 20% of them, worth about $140 billion, are in stranded wallets or lost.
I know, that's crazy.
140 billion.
That's a lot.
But like, can't you?
Isn't there like a forgot my password utility? Did somebody build that in? Like,
you think there'd be a really good hacker? They were like, I'll give you 20. Didn't he? There was another one where he offered like 20%.
Yep.
And or something, and they were like, no.
Well, yeah, because I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's there isn't an easy way or a predictable way to get at it. That's the problem. But no.
Oh no, it was the guy that threw it in the landfill, and he told the city,
oh yeah,
that if you dig it out, I'll give you the city 20%, and it's worth to the city like 50 million to 20%. So
yeah, why would you not do it at that point?
Two guys.
Yeah,
I know.
Would you not?
They dig up ET video games. You can't dig up $300 million.
Right.
LastPass has been around for 3 years longer than this guy got the Bitcoins in.
Yeah, but nobody uses version 1 of anything.
And 3 years? And 1Password was around for 5 years before he got these Bitcoins. So password managers were definitely a thing when this came out.
Yeah, but do they work with USB drives? I don't know.
You just use it to store a note with your password. You don't have to attach it to the drive.
Well, you're a genius then, Randy, and this guy's a moron.
So why are there internet controlled chastity belts?
Dude, I love this story because in certain communities in the BDSM world, there's not even necessarily in that world, but there are a lot. Dude, there's a whole genre of distance-based toys that have risen over the past few years, and especially over the last year in particular. Go figure why.
How's the guy supposed to take a shit? That's the very first thing. I don't care about anything else.
Well, so that's the thing. He would have to ask permission from whoever has the unlocking app.
I'm talking about the guy that locked it and demands Bitcoin to unlock it. The hacker.
Yeah. That's like I said.
Ask him permission. He's got to pay him to poop.
Oh no! Oh, so I thought you meant like before. Oh no! So the guy basically, the guy has an internet-controlled chastity belt, and wakes up one morning. And the sad reality is like a year ago, they had it had been published that there was a really nasty security exploit, that there was a whole API that was open and exposed. That this,
by the way, it's not me. It's the victim who has to be identified only as Robert. That's not me.
Woke up to a message that said, I want to make sure I get this right. Your cock is mine. And demanding and it's the equivalent. It's $750. Like that's
0.02 Bitcoin.
Yeah. So yeah, it's $750 at today's value. So I mean, it's
how much did this belt cost? Can
he said, fortunately, I didn't have it. No, fortunately, he didn't have it locked on himself, so he wasn't wearing it.
Oh,
so he can poop fine. So why bother paying it?
Oh yeah, just go buy a new one. Jesus.
Boo. Way to ruin the story, Bob. I thought I missed that part of the story.
No, he's not.
I was too busy giggling at everything else. But hey, speaking of events, for those who haven't heard, the auto show has already been canceled for next year again.
Next year?
Yep.
In June of 22?
No. This year. Sorry. The next auto show. It's not. So it was originally scheduled for June of this year. They are apparently going to do some sort of an event with Belle Isle in September, and they're pushing the 2022-2023 events back to September.
No, it's October. At the M1 Concourse in Pontiac.
Oh, okay. So yeah, they're pushing the 2022-2023 events back to September and October, respectively.
Oh,
which is still warm enough for an outside event in Michigan.
Yeah,
usually.
Depending on the week.
The auto show for the history of my life was on the coldest week in January.
Oh, it always was.
Yeah.
Dude, I've had the memories just popped not too long ago of when we got press passes for that stupid thing.
Was it third week of January previously?
Yeah, and I
remember
always
minus 10 degrees.
Oh, I remember us like freezing our asses off, walking across to the post bar to go grab a couple beers.
No, you know it's bad when I'm cold. Like I'm wearing shorts to therapy now. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Of no surprise, just because this is something I've been talking about. Apparently highway deaths were up 4.6% in the first 9 months of this whole COVID outbreak thing. And I'm not surprised, dude. I've been talking about 94 being ridiculous since I mean, I think I drove down there, like whether it was March or April or May, you know, like anytime I drive down there, 94, it used to be like a clump of cars all doing like 62, 63 miles an hour. So now that is only the slow lane and the middle lane. The fast lane is people going at least 75 to 80. And it's crazy. Like I guess I'm not surprised by this stat, but you would have thought with more people staying home and more people that like the numbers, maybe that should have balanced out. But
The
people
amount
are
of
apparently
people
dumb.
that think 75 is NASCAR is too damn high. Like going from all the way from the fast lane to the slow lane, cutting in and out, cutting in and out, cutting in and out.
Do you
Yeah,
ever drive on
like-
the Southfield?
Oh,
Oh,
that
yeah.
was always.
It's
like
got the
that.
walls and it's
The lodge.
posted
Oh, yeah, the lodge.
55 and
The lodge. You go if you're not going 90 on the lodge, you're getting beeped at from behind. Like,
True.
but
I'm
now
on
though, like but like fatal crashes up 5%. That's a lot.
yeah. No, it really is.
where are people in a hurry to get to? What?
Who
So-
knows?
This is a crazy story, and like half the stories I put this week was shit that got banned. Like the Odyssey book got banned, but this, like this one, like is weird to me. Like I understand if you don't wear a mask, like in Delta's, like okay, ban hammer, right? Like you're gonna impact the safety of our passengers. But apparently they, when Romney and Lindsey Graham were on the flight and they got heckled.
Yep.
Apparently, if you heckled them, you got the ban hammer from Delta.
You're creating a disturbance on a plane.
Yeah, there's so many disturbances that people get thrown off for. This is not surprising.
Yeah.
But no, but to get the ban hammer, what's one thing to get thrown off? It's another thing because you hear all the time that the drunk lady, and then they get yelled. When they get out, everybody cheers and yells at her, "You stupid bitch!" And like those videos. There's like one a day of those. But like to find the passengers that like yelled. What happens if you just yelled like "Screw you, Mitt"? Like you got banned for life from Delta. Like, dude, that's crazy.
I get it. I don't
I
be
know.
a dick. Don't be a dick in public.
I'm just gonna get to the point where I'm gonna give in to my overlords, my 1984, my George Orwell overlords.
See, everybody who
Take
keeps
me.
quoting 1984, I'm convinced never read 1984. But I mean, on a sad note, I get it.
No, I
because
watched the minute and a half long YouTube video that showed the 8 things that have come true. So that means I'm up
you're
on it.
fully up to speed.
Yes.
I guess speaking of Prowler and all that stuff, but I mean, talking about consequences. Did you catch the story about the banker in Georgia? Who apparently he's a vice president for a bank in Georgia, was at the Capitol on the 6th, was live streaming everything while he was inside the Capitol building. And I guess a buddy of his on the police force said, "Hey, dude, we got a federal warrant for your arrest." And so he walked down in the basement, shot himself in the chest. And that's where his wife found him. Dude's got had a wife and kids, and now they don't have a dad.
Jesus Christ.
So I mean, that's and that's the thing. I mean, I feel on some level, on one hand, I like the whole QAnon and all that crap really infuriates me, but on the other hand, I get it. Or at least I understand. I mean, I guess because I understand how like cults operate, and I understand how people can get, delusional and brainwashed about crap, and it's just
Like these people are going to go storm the Capitol one day and go back to work the next
Right.
day. Like, what is their thought process?
Like, did you really think? And you're live streaming it and posting it everywhere. I mean, that's just crazy to me.
Well, I mean, they've done it. Never mind. I'm not going to say what I'm thinking.
You don't want to draw that comparison.
No, at least they
I'm
went
dying
back to work the next day. I said it.
Yeah, I want one of these cold snap machines. They're describing it as it's Keurig of home soft serve ice cream. I gotta have me one. I think that's an amazing idea. I gotta have it.
Why not just buy a custard machine from?
I was going to say, just buy one of those Yo Nana's machines for $30. Shove some frozen fruit in, and out comes soft serve.
Yeah,
didn't even know that was a thing.
I got some soft serve for you too, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
So what's your take on Kurt Schilling?
I think that's a little extreme. And that's
so if you don't know what we're talking about, Kurt Schilling had his insurance policy canceled by AIG after he tweeted support for the people that were at the Capitol. Granted, he's been a customer, AAA customer, 0 claims, 17 years, and they canceled his policy
So, and I guess like I only saw
after
the
a couple tweets.
like I was gonna say like I'm curious if AIG is going to say anything about this, because right now we only have his part of this story, and I think if we've learned anything, wait for this at least the second part of the story, and then figure out where the third part of the story actually is. But I mean, it's a
let me rephrase what he said is complete dipshittery. Like
yeah,
as soon as you say demo KKK crats or like libtards or whatever Republican, whatever the stupid words.
Yeah.
Once you say that, you're whatever you said is completely not even.
You know, but I mean, you're allowed to say whatever you want to say. But I mean, I think that's been one of the biggest discussions online over the course of, the past couple of weeks. And, here we are, what are we, 38 and a half hours away from the inauguration at the time we're recording this, is people are like, oh, this is violating free speech. No, it's not.
Those need a lesson too. Those people.
It's you need to go back to like 4th and 5th grade and you need to learn what the Constitution actually says, because it says the government can't censor your free speech, but private companies can do whatever the hell they want. And so but again, it's okay.
But it's also you're not free from repercussions. So
that's the big one.
Like right now, AIG drew a really line. Not saying I don't even know how to get a policy from AIG. I don't even know, is it life insurance? I don't even know what
who knows.
They're like the biggest company in the US, and I have no idea what they do. They got my bailout money. They're good. But yeah, I mean, how many people are going to cancel because of it? You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, and that's the thing. You saw the dip in Amazon stock and Twitter stock and all that kind of stuff, and those are starting to come back to normal now, as you would expect.
You expect that, but like the day of, I think the day of the Twitter lost 8 billion. I said it again. God, Facebook lost like 38 billion.
Hey, before we get Fred in here, because for those of you keeping score at home, Fred Brown is absolutely joining us tonight for the latest on vaccines and variants and all that kind of stuff. So what was I posted it on my Facebook wall. So like everybody I knew was watching the Night Strangler doc and was like, oh my God, this is the creepiest thing ever. It's going to completely freak you out and blow your mind, and it's going to keep you up at night. Dude, I couldn't make it through like 15 minutes into the first episode. They show you the first measurement of a footprint, because there was a footprint at one of the crime scenes, and it's from the San Dimas Lumber Company. And so from that moment forward, all I can do through all 4 episodes is A, notice every time the San Dimas Lumber Company shows up on screen, and B, look for Bill and Ted from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Because for those of you who are too young, Bill and Ted went to San Dimas High in the background of shots. So, but it is a phenomenal documentary.
That got me, and the Hillside Stranglers got me, because that was a punk band in Detroit with Son of Sam.
Mm-hmm.
It was Jason Strangler of the Hillside. They were like one of the prominent punk bands in like the early 90s, late 80s. So like every time they said Hillside Stranglers, all I'm thinking about is punk rock.
Right.
But that was a good watch.
Oh, phenomenal. It's a phenomenal doc. If you have,
I really want to talk about one thing, because I think it's important. I didn't want to wait till next week. The movie Dark Waters. I think everyone on the planet needs to watch it.
I saw your note about it. So what platform is it on? What's it about?
So I got it on Showtime on demand.
Okay.
It stars Mark Ruffalo. He produced it, The Incredible Hulk. And it's 1976 West Virginia. DuPont basically built
that story. Okay.
Built a factory there and a dump, but they called the dump like Glowing Meadows or something, something ridiculous. But they built the community center, they built the baseball parks, they built the church, they built they employed 3/4 of the town. Well, this farmer knew a high-powered attorney, which was Mark Ruffalo in Cincinnati, an environmental attorney.
Okay.
And he's like, come to my farm. Like, here's these tapes. And he had like 200 cows, and it was down to 2, and they all died. He's like, what would cause this? So finally he gets an injunction on DuPont to give him all the records of everything they've ever done. I'm trying to make the story quick. They give him like a 10,000 square foot warehouse full of papers. So what does he do? He sits down on the floor, goes through it, finds everything. So he finally gets him into court, and he's fighting him for almost 15 years. So they created a chemical called C8, which is like a fluoride and then 8 parts carbon. But the EPA DuPont was allowed to self-regulate. And this was the main ingredient for Teflon. So like there was like out of the town in West Virginia, like 2/3 of the people got like 8 different kinds of cancer from this chemical. And they call it like I think it's an everyday chemical or everywhere chemical that your body can't process. Once it gets in your system, it can't get out. They said right now that's one of like 600 everywhere chemicals that Teflon. But like now, like they're still fighting, and like right now DuPont's like starting to pay out. Like, but this whole town, like literally 2/3 of them, people were getting like testicular cancer, pancreatic cancer, like people all had black teeth because the amounts of fluoride in the water was too high.
Which brings us back to Night Stalker.
Right. That was
They're
meth teeth.
forever chemicals.
Forever chemicals. Thank you. But like basically this thing is, and no one really kind of knows about it. Like I'm looking at this going, like I didn't know I thought it was bad, but I didn't realize it was like they just destroyed like what DuPont did.
Yeah.
And they allowed them to self-regulate. Like the EPA was just like, man, let them whatever. So they're allowed to make whatever the hell they want, put it wherever they want, put it in the landfill, put it in the water system, put it in the water supply, poison a town. So then this farmer's going through hell because everyone's losing their jobs because the plant closes.
Right.
Like, oh, you're the bad guys. Yeah, but you guys are dying of cancer. Like,
yeah.
This kid was born, like, looks like the Toxic Avenger. He actually did a bit part in the movie. Like, they go, babies have like eyes here and noses shut, and like, insane.
I'll give it a look.
It's I don't want to say it's a long movie, but just like for the end part where all the true stuff, or if you just might want to Google it instead of watching the whole thing.
Gotcha.
I mean, dude, crazy. Like seriously, I didn't even know it was a true story. I was just like, oh, it's good. Looks good. Whatever.
All right, are we ready?
Can we bitch about WandaVision for a minute?
I loved watching it, but I have no idea what the hell's going on.
I was like, yeah, there are 2 episodes in. I have not watched it yet.
How about we do The Honeymooners and I Love Lucy and I Dream a Genie, but with Vision and Scarlet Witch, and then he put his hand in his throat to save him from choking.
Well, and I think so. Like everything I read about it, like even in the previews and stuff that I saw ahead of time, that doesn't surprise me because I mean that looked like what it was going to be all along.
I thought it was going to have some sort of weird dark something, not like.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's. I mean,
we've only seen 2 episodes, so
yeah. I mean,
that's all I'll ever see.
Yeah, her whole power is.
Are you not going to finish watching it?
No,
is altering reality and that kind of stuff. So it's her altering reality to have more time with Vision. So I mean, I'm sure it'll come to fruition.
Yeah, they lost me. I'm done.
All right, here he comes.
Oh my God.
The chieftain of doom and gloom himself.
How are you doing?
Hi, Fred.
Good. How are you tonight, man?
Good. You guys,
we gotta give him like a wrestling name, like the Arbiter of Rona.
Crusher.
oh my gosh.
And it would be appropriate for Zoom. And in this corner.
No, I got it. All right. Captain COVID. There you go.
Well, we got some good news and bad news as always. How's everything
Hailing from
going?
parts unknown.
Oh, well.
So how are you, Fred?
Everything's going well. I had a good vacation. Celebrating Martin Luther King Day today. I think we don't have enough celebrations like this. I think we should have something, kind of reserve something every month. The Europeans do this in a good way. They sort of say, well, today is special day X, and the whole day you get the whole day off and you relax a little bit. We don't do that enough.
Japan has Golden Week. Golden Week is the best.
I love it.
No one works besides retail and restaurants and service industry. And basically, if you're a banker in an office job, you get the week off. Everyone else has to serve you. Everybody gets like the whole country's off for like 6 days.
We need those things. I'm all for this.
I mean, if you look, dude, every day. I mean, it's like National Pancake Day, National Dress Up Your Cat Day.
So, little known fact. Do you know what day it is tomorrow?
One day until I start drinking at 10 a.m. to watch the inauguration day?
No, it is National COVID Day tomorrow. Apparently at 5:00 in the afternoon, we're gonna, kind of reflect on all the people we've lost in this year.
I did not know that.
I didn't either.
Yeah, so little known fact. Probably one of the least publicized days of all time.
Not to be morbid, but have you ever seen what they do in Europe on the Holocaust Remembrance Day?
Oh boy.
They put on the it's if you want to watch it, you'll get a tear in your eye. The entire country stops for 60 seconds. They turn on the air raid sirens. And if you're in a car, you stop and get out of the car. If you're walking, you stop. Like everyone physically just stops. And the sirens go off, and then it stops, and then everybody gets in the car and drives away. Like it's very awe-inspiring watching it. Like literally you'll tear up. Like you're watching, you're like, it's powerful as hell. But anyway, not to bring the room down.
Well,
I was going to say, well, let me cheer everybody up by saying that in addition to MLK Day today is also Winnie the Pooh Day.
Oh,
well, that's nice. Well,
Christopher Robin's Psychotic Break Day. Nice. That's amazing. So Fred, so obviously I want to talk, so I want to make sure let's talk vaccine distribution. Let's talk about the variants and mutations and that kind of stuff. I know there was a story that came out today that I wanted to ask you about specifically.
Yep.
Where apparently there's been a higher than expected rate of allergic reactions with the Moderna vaccine.
Yes, that's right.
And so and I believe that is what is, because somebody asked me, oh well, didn't Michigan just switch to that? I'm like, dude, to the best of my knowledge, everywhere is using whichever one they can get their hands on. Like let's be real. So I don't know. It's a matter of switch. It's a matter of what do we have in stock that we can use.
And I don't know all the states that particular batch, the batch 441 went to. I don't know that Michigan's affected, but apparently, more states than that got than just California got.
I was gonna say, I believe it was California. Yeah.
Yeah. So San Diego, and they had 6 adverse events. Now, normally when you take the shot, if you had a chance to take a shot, it's very mild. In other words, the vaccinator is tiny, very small needle. You don't even realize they've really been jabbed. And then, 2 days later, you're having a reactogenicity effect, but you don't.
So, hey, Bob, your wife should be totally fine with getting the shot. Hey.
But after you take the shot, you wait for 15 minutes and you see if you've got any allergic reactions. Well, 6 out of the 21,000, they were at a super site in San Diego. 6 out of the 21,000 people vaccinated got an allergic reaction. So 6 out of 21,000 doesn't sound like much, but we only expect 1 in 100,000 to have an adverse event. So you do all the math, and that's 20 times higher than we were expecting. And so that's what shut things down. There are a couple things that can cause that. And I don't want to, scare anybody. We don't know yet. We haven't done anything, but, we can go through some of the production, how this whole thing works. There could have been some impurities. You'll see that there's several purification steps in this mRNA vaccine process. We can talk a little bit about that.
So yeah, Fred, I just hop in real quick. Someone I know that got the vaccine and said, they feel fine, but for 3 days they felt like shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I know it's not like the flu vaccine where they give you the flu and you get, like what would attribute to that?
Yeah, basically, you should expect to. The best day to take the test is take the vaccine is a Friday, because then that way you get Saturday, Sunday. If you don't want to avoid missing,
like everybody.
No. I take it on a weekday, so I get the
take it on Monday.
Same time. Yeah,
like everybody scheduling their vasectomies for right before March Madness starts. Yeah, that's the.
Yeah, I guess that's a strategy, but interesting. So at any rate, but basically, statistically, you're going to feel tired about 60% of the time. You'll feel like you have a headache and chill about 30% of the time, and you'll have a slight fever about 30% of the time. So that's sort of the adverse events. That's called reactogenicity. What happens is that basically your body's responding to an attack. And you're building those antibodies. Of course, it's not a real virus; it's just a little piece of the virus. So you're not at risk of getting the disease. It's just you're building your immune system, and that actually indicates that it's working. And interestingly, we're older, so older people have about 10% less effect than the younger people. And
you're screwed, Randy. Sorry.
And the other issue is, sadly, if you've had a bad first reaction, chances are you're going to have a slightly worse second reaction. So just to be ready.
So I guess, so is it going to be, because I mean we've seen a lot with Moderna and Pfizer being out. I mean, so is it going to be about the same with the Johnson & Johnson one, just because I mean that is more of a traditional vaccine?
It is. It's an adenovirus vaccine. They use it for rabies. They use it for Ebola. They use it for a couple of other vaccines.
Secret is it's just repackaged baby shampoo. That's all.
No more COVID.
A little bit of that bleach. No, you don't want to do that. So basically, yeah, the J&J numbers I haven't seen yet. My guess is that it might be slightly less efficacious, but and it might be slightly less durable because you're only getting it one shot. The nice thing is that after 14 days, you're going to be at full efficacy. So what happens is you get one shot, they watch you for 14 days, and then they test you. And my guess that it'll probably be in the 70 to 80% effectiveness range, which is significantly less than where we are with Moderna and Pfizer. But it's only one shot, and you're that much more protected. The issue is once you tab that one, you shouldn't have the Pfizer or Moderna.
Gotcha. So, and then, I mean, and I'm sure you have slides galore.
If you want, we can go through.
So feel free to tell me to wait if it's. But I mean, I guess let's talk about these variants that are out there. The mutations that are coming through, because I mean that's the big thing. So we've heard now that in-person dining might be reopening as of February 1st. I don't think we've seen any details about capacity limits or what that's really going to mean or anything like that. But I mean, obviously, everything, I guess every respectable source of information, says that it's still going to get worse before it gets better. So I guess, I guess those are, two things I wanted to ask you about is one, this variant and the mutations and what's going on there. And then two, kind of what are your thoughts about February 1st and how do you feel about that?
Yeah. So with the variants, initially I wasn't too concerned. I was hearing some reports. We were watching it closely. We basically mapped about 4,000 different variants that we're concerned about. Of those, few of them have come through. And then I went to a special conference that was where Britain was really facing this problem head on.
Right.
Has a lot of capability in the space in terms of genetic sequencing. And a lot of my friends were at that meeting, and they invited me to kind of look at the data. And I'll tell you, it's going to be a problem, unfortunately, and it's going to. And the problem is that if you are listening to this and you are an owner of an establishment that is likely to be shut down, do your business in February, because by March it's going to be bad. Yeah, it's going to be really bad. I'm not talking just about what I wish I could be more positive, but the truth is that what happens is that you think everything.
Fred, this is why I want you here.
What you expected, right?
I don't want people blowing smoke up my ass. I want real data and real.
There's a high likelihood that we're going to have a scare, right? Because what we're doing is watching the doubling. We're watching the doubling of this new variant. It's called the B1.1.7 variant. And in this variant, we're seeing a doubling in the last week. So if you do the math, you go 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. Now, those are percents of penetration. So right now we were at 1% penetration last week. We're at 2% penetration this week. We'll be at 4% penetration next week. By week 6, we'll be at 64% penetration. And by middle of March, this will be over 90% of our cases will be as a result of this particular variant or the new South African variant, which we're still studying, which has other issues that make it even more scary in some ways.
Well, so that's what I was going to. So, I guess, so what are the tweaks that go along with this? I mean, because really, I think all we've really heard so far is that it's more contagious.
Yeah,
and which is bad in and of itself. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, is this a but wait, there's more situation?
Yeah. So unfortunately, it's 70% more contagious. And if you think about what that does, it's an exponential factor, right? It's that R factor we're talking about.
Right.
So
that's
multiplying R by 70% more.
Yeah.
1.7, right? So all of a sudden you're going from a 2.5 R factor to a 3+ factor, and that is really, really significant. That means every time you've moved from a situation where one person gives 2.5 people the disease to one person gives 3.6 people the disease, right? And that means it really rips right through you. And the issue is that it actually produces more viral load. And so it's much more spreadable. And what that means is that what you're doing today isn't going to work when this virus hits, right? If you're going to the bar, you're
well, it just hit
sick. Chances are you will when this thing hits you.
So and I believe so is that the case that's in Ann Arbor, that's in Washtenaw County, excuse me?
We got one already here. Someone went to the UK, picked it up. And
when you fly internationally, though, aren't you supposed? I obviously I don't want to do what they're doing in Germany, putting people in gulags right now, quarantine gulags. But I mean, aren't they supposed to? Are you supposed to be under strict quarantine when you fly internationally these days?
So anyone coming back from another country is supposed to have a negative test 3 days before flight. But that unfortunately was done before this person came back into Ann Arbor. Yeah. So we have a case here already, but chances are this isn't the first case. We were doing so testing to detect it that it's probably out there in the community.
But I mean, so what does this one do that the other one didn't do, or why is this one fancy, new, and improved? We put more soap. How do you get more soap and soap?
Yeah, exactly.
Who wrote the damn service pack for this thing? Like release 1 wasn't bad enough.
Why don't I show you some? I can actually show you the pictures.
Do your thing.
Maybe it'll be helpful. I wanted to show you quickly a couple things, and maybe we already know this. So if we're going into too much depth, we don't have to. But I wanted to tell you first how great these vaccines are, because they're really incredible vaccines. You guys will be impressed with the data. I don't know if you've seen the data that Pfizer and Moderna presented, but I can show you some of that.
Okay.
Then I was going to show you, even though we have a perfect vaccine now, how it could move to a situation of imperfection. And that's the discussion about the mutation and the new variants. Yep. And then I thought we could talk a little bit about people getting vaccinated, which is the distribution question.
The distribution, and that was another question that I had was WTF.
So, we can and we're getting better, but we're still not where we need to be. But I
waited. I went ahead and got myself a little pickleback together for.
Beautiful.
I should have drank it before you started talking, but I'm going to do so now. Get your screen up and running, Mr. Brown.
Let me show you guys some slides, and you guys just you interrupt. Feel free, jump in anytime you like, and we can jump around if you want. I've got a number of slides. This is material I presented to Harvard, and of course, we're smarter than those guys.
I was like, yeah, you were just back. You were just back. What, a week ago?
Yes, on the 10th. I actually showed this to Harvard on the 10th because they were wondering what does herd immunity.
Oh, look! Hey, we made the slide.
Yes. So I've upgraded the slide to make it more appropriate. Let me see if I can go to a slideshow.
I don't even care. I don't even care if you just put it on there. I'm just happy we're on the slide.
So here we go. Here we are. IT and the D in lights on the January 18th, Martin Luther King Day, and we will. So here's the situation. You guys know about me. This is you guys. I'll send you the material. You can send it out to anyone you like.
Absolutely.
And this is super simplified. I have people who are epidemiologists out there, people who are in the space are going to say, oh my gosh, oh, my tooth hurts. Yeah, okay, it sort of works, but it's not. It will be. People will have to grin and bear it. I apologize in advance if it's too simple. These are all my opinions, so I've gotten okay from all my clients. To
the views and opinions expressed by Fred Brown are.
And so I work with a few different states and a few an OWS and the Trump administration. I'm working a little bit with the transition with the Biden administration, so that we've got some continuity. That's been a challenge, I'll have to say. But
don't say.
Oh man, it is. Yeah. So at any rate, the first question was.
I was going to say, and actually, that's probably going to be Bob's question, because that's been his theory since for quite some time now, that this all disappears in about 38 hours.
That's right. It was all just.
That's why the new one's out. See,
it was all just something to give poor President Trump a hard time, and now we can turn off.
Right.
We can turn
the old one's gone, just like the flu's gone. Now the old Rona's gone. Now the new Rona's in.
The flu is having trouble making it through. Right. We've trained for a triathlon, so at this point we're doing a 5K, and it's simple stuff.
That's my favorite argument. I got to drop this one in. When I read other stuff, everyone's arguing online, and everybody's like, the flu's gone. And they're like, that's because people are wearing masks. Then why isn't Corona gone?
Sadly, Corona is 2.5 times more effective and 10 times more deadly. Other than that, we're ready for it. Yeah, that's the problem with this stupid thing. It's one of those things that's, frankly, it's not as deadly and not as transmittable as some of the worst we've got, but it's like right in that middle section where it kind of gets you, and it's been tougher to get rid of than I ever would have thought, being in this space for a long time. Like I've been doing this for 40 years. years, and I thought this was going to be something done in 3 months. And it just goes and goes.
Well, and that's one of the, I think we talked about that in one of the probably March, April timeframe was, that fine balancing act that a disease has to walk in order to, like Ebola kills you too quickly, so
That's
won't
right.
become pandemic.
Yep.
The
And
common
you
cold,
got to be really close to them to get it. So
yeah, the common cold, highly virulent, but doesn't kill you, so no big deal. This one's right in that sweet spot of badness.
Yeah, this is the Goldilocks one, and man, it's really caught on, and it's been giving everybody fits, and the Trump administration did the best they could, and man,
Sure, we'll go ahead and just let that stand. Sure, we'll go with that.
There's some good people who are doing the best they could. I mean,
oh, there always are. Yeah. I mean, it's like no. I mean, like no matter which company, they're like, oh, that company sucks because I had one bad experience with one person. Okay, well, you know what? There's a cajillion other people that are there that are trying their best. Like nobody wants to be that guy.
I know, but at any rate, I think the Biden administration is going to have challenges too. Trust me on this one. It's going to be we're starting off on a really tough place. Now we'll get
right
in a second. But basically, the first question that these guys at Harvard asked is what's this herd immunity thing anyway? And the herd immunity means that you've got enough people vaccinated, and that's what's happening on the left hand side of the picture. You've got enough people in the dark blue who are vaccinated that they're able to protect the people who decide not to get vaccinated or can't get vaccinated for various reasons from the red squad that's coming in and infected.
Right.
So there's enough people who are sort of in the way blocking the viral transmission that the light blue guys can get away without being vaccinated. Then there's failed herd immunity, and there the dark blue guys couldn't protect the light blue guys from getting infected, and that's what herd immunity is. That means that we don't have to vaccinate everybody. We don't have to make everybody immune. We have to have enough people immune so that you're protected from the people who are sick. And that happens at a community level, in your own house, and then of course it happens at an international level too. India is worried about Canada. And if you notice, herd immunity is more difficult to achieve and these are really important dot points, right? Number one, if you got a lot of asymptomatic spread, it's really hard to get herd immunity in place because everyone feels like they're doing great and they're immune and everything's wonderful. And in fact, you get too close to other people and you get sick. The virus is super abundant, and we're at a high viral level right now. The impact varies by population group. So suppose you got half the people who are over 65 who want to take this thing, and everybody who's under 18 says, I don't want to deal with it. That means, and those communities move together, and so it's hard to protect these large groups of communities who are vaccinated versus large groups of communities who aren't vaccinated. If it's pretty evenly spread, then it's pretty easy. But if it's not evenly spread, challenge. And the biggest thing is you can transmit without physical contact, right? With the other ones, it's pretty easy because you know whether you're getting in physical contact with people. In this case, it's aerosolized, and so it's in the air, and you can be unvaccinated, thinking you're, among the vaccinated and safe, and someone who's sick breathes around you and gets you sick. Mm-hmm. So, and the other big interesting thing about herd immunity is that it varies by R, right? It's 1 minus 1 over R naught, and that R naught changes, right? We just talked about the fact that this new variant is going to move your R naught from 2.5 to 3.6.
Right.
You're going, oh man, so all of a sudden, what we do actually matters quite a bit. If you're doing more masking, you don't, like China, it only has to vaccinate a few people and it's going to be protected. But unfortunately, we got people all over the place who with this disease, it's a lot more prevalent. And so we're going to have to do a lot more with the vaccine in addition to the vaccine in order to get herd immunity than they will have to do. It's sort of unfair since they started this, but that's the facts on the ground.
Gotcha. So
you get a sense of this. Now, herd immunity is something you don't really know you're achieving, right? You think you're there, you're going to measure level of immunity in the population, but it's something that happens, in hindsight, not in real time. You'll know afterwards that, yeah, we had herd immunity then, but you won't really know it at this particular time. We'll try to measure it, we'll try to understand it, but when we're close to not close, we don't actually know precisely, because we don't know R naught well enough yet
right.
to understand what the number is. So at any rate, that's about herd. That's what herd immunity is. And interestingly, epidemiologists never talk about herd immunity occurring naturally. Herd immunity always occurs as a result of vaccination. You can get herd protections naturally, but really immunity, you better be, you talk about a vaccination situation. So when people were talking about Sweden going to go for the herd effect, that didn't really mean exactly that epidemiologically, just so you're aware. So we have to have a vaccine. We got a great vaccine. That's the good news. Let's take a look. So here's how herd immunity is calculated. You have to say, the percent of the overall population has some immunity, and that's a combination of two things. That's the number of people who are vaccinated, and plus a percent of people who have naturally induced immunity because they were sick, and that together gives you your total percentage of immune people. And these are the different factors that we'll go into underneath there that indicates where we're going to have some challenges. And I'll
So was Sweden a success or a failure doing herd immunity?
It failed.
Okay.
It failed, unfortunately. And they've decided to go ahead and start to do distancing measures like everybody else did. Now that they have a vaccine, they actually have a chance to have immunity, have herd immunity without the distancing. But they realized that they didn't. It didn't work for them. They have quite a bit higher infection rates than Denmark and other like countries near them, and they tried. It was a noble effort. The issue was we didn't know enough about this thing, and it turned out to be more dangerous than we thought. If Sweden had been right, and a few of the epidemiologists early on said, "Oh, the R0 is really only about 1.2, and the death rate really only 0.3," and it turned out death rate was closer to 0.7, and R factor was more like 2.5, and all of a sudden that whole thing that they were thinking about blew up. But they thought it was worth the chance. The other reason that it was working is what we knew is that in Sweden, if you're ever in Sweden in the summertime, everyone's out on the island. They're not in Stockholm altogether. And now that it's gotten dark, right now this time of year you only have 3 or 4 hours of sunlight in Stockholm. Everyone's in bed, in their rooms and with together, and now it's really starting to spread. And now we got this new variant, which we can get into in a second. So here are the vaccines. Great news. We'll go. I know your audience knows this. I just want to show you what the data really look like and get a sense of this. Here's how we measure vaccinations. We say safety, effectiveness, durability, scalability, right? The safety, it's a very safe vaccine up to the point of time that we've had to view it. It's about 1 in 100,000 people have some adverse event. 100,000 people, you're gonna have to be pretty special to have an adverse event on these kind of vaccines. The effectiveness, it reduces the severity of symptoms. We did the best kind of tests possible. The people who are administering the test didn't know whether they're giving them placebo, people who or active. The people who were getting the test didn't know whether they're getting placebo or active. It's double-blind, random controlled. We did this 156 sites. So you're talking about a broad geography of the population, a huge number of people being done, and this is about as good a clinical study as you can do. Scalability. We're scaling now. We're seeing that most of the problems actually, sadly, are in distribution, not in manufacturing. That might start to change over time. We'll get into that. And durability, we don't know. We've only had this in people for about 8 months. So we're still finding it out. Here's what the process we go through, right? And the first question people say is, "Gosh, that really went fast. I thought you were working on this for 40 years and you only done 6 vaccines. What's the problem?
Right.
Why were you slow or what?" And the answer is, well, these tests actually didn't cut any corners. And they went fast because we did a lot of things in parallel. We had new technologies, which meant you were flying, you're doing that much faster, that much more. It was all genetic technology, not the old cell culture, full cell, whole virus work that I used to do. This is stuff that's very small genetic pieces that are easy to inject on platforms that go fast that we know a lot about. We had a head start with SARS, which is great. Normally you start off flat-footed. In this case, we're 85% the same genetics as in the SARS vaccine we had ready to go in the COVID-2 vaccine. The international community also all got together and said, "Okay, what do we think this vaccine needs to do?" And they all decided it's got to have these characteristics. It's got to be this safe. It's got to have this kind of efficacy. We agree on this all, and it does that. We're good, right? Internationally, and everybody signed up for that, with the exception of U.S. and Russia, sadly. But basically, China agreed. All the other groups agreed that that's what we're going to go for. The governments de-risk everything, right? Normally, I think you take a huge risk on this stuff. You got to build manufacturing plants. You go slowly to make sure you're not overextending. You kind of scale up to the extent they need in clinical trials. In this case, they went full bore, going commercial on day one, and so they de-risked everything, and they guaranteed sales, right? Normally, when I developed these vaccines, I had to start at 0 sales. These guys this year, Moderna will sell $11.6 billion of a vaccine, guaranteed. And it's January 18th. Okay, I was at the JP Morgan conference and they said, "Yep, $10.6 billion of sales so far." Oh, I'll make that $11.6 billion sales. That's on January that's before they even really got a chance to launch this thing. So when I had to work like hell to get $1 billion of sales over a year, these guys are doing 10 billion in less than a few months. That's pretty awesome, right?
Yeah.
That's a different sort of environment. And the last thing is, I can't tell you how many times I set up a big clinical site in like Sierra Leone, and all of a sudden we have a big outbreak in Liberia, and you got all the clinical guys ready to go, and you can't find the disease, and he's like, oh, you're great. In this case, we had this pandemic everywhere, so wherever you set things up, you're going to find people who got sick. So those things allowed us to go a hell of a lot faster than normal. And you can see here that basically Pfizer killed it, right? I mean, they went through preclinical testing and licensing, and they got started in April. Moderna had almost a 30-day head start on that. So they started phase 1 a month late, and they finished through and got the EUA in 20 days before Moderna did, with 50% more patients. Holy cow, right? I mean, so if you want to kind of say, which company did it better? Man, Pfizer did great. The difference is that Moderna has a lot more capability in manufacturing Pfizer business. That's why you see the difference in cold chain. So Moderna did some things with their extra time, and the Pfizer really leveraged their scale. Right at about September, both of them realized, oh my gosh, we don't have enough older people, and we don't have enough people of color in this test. We want to get more people in. So Moderna actually slowed down their trial. They said, we're going to go to other sites. We're going to pull in people of color. We're going to pull in the older people, and then we'll have a better sample to actually demonstrate efficacy. Pfizer said, no, we're not going to slow this down. We're going to actually just increase more. So they turned on the scale, right? So at any rate, some interesting kind of pharmaceutical stuff in there about who did what. So the first phase, right? Phase 1, what you want to do basically is you want to say, did this thing, you inject this stuff in, and the question is, do you have any antibodies to the virus? And here is really critical data. We found out that after 1 dose, you get about the same amount of protection as you would if you got sick and recovered. So that those convalescent plasma, that's what happens when you get sick and recover. That's that first 100 and 0.2 numbers, right? And you're looking for, coronaviruses are really tough to kill because they get established fast and they reproduce quick. So you want to hit both circulating antibodies that are already in your system, and you want to have your manufacturing capability in your cells, both. So you want to have both what they call B and T cell activation as well as the circulating antibody activation. And you can see that in both cases, you get a heck of a result, right? So if you start with about 100 on the circulating antibodies in terms of its concentration, Pfizer, after 2 doses, had about 150, so a 50% increase over what you would get if you just got sick and recovered.
Gotcha.
Moderna had a lot better results, except in the older population. That you can see it really it went up and then it dropped off quick. So we're sort of watching that, but overall, these are both super results. Really good results.
So now I know. So you've got on here, if you've had COVID, still take the vaccine. Like,
absolutely,
is there?
Right? You're only at 100, or you're only at 0.2 right now.
Right. So but is there? Because I have a friend of mine who had it maybe a month and a half ago.
Yep.
And still went ahead and got the vaccine.
Absolutely.
Are you supposed is there supposed to be a wait, a lag? Like, what should you just jump to dose 2 at that point? Like,
no. It turns out in this case, interestingly, in many cases, we don't. If you get sick and recover, your antibodies aren't quite as good as what are actually better than what a vaccine will do for you, right? Because you're reacting to more of the virus. In this particular case, the stuff you're getting from a vaccine is actually a better antibody response than from the naturally occurring infection.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it's a special result, and it's really surprising. And the other big thing is you really need 2 doses. You need 2 doses because you want to get the antibodies up so they come down more slowly, and that's for durability.
So now is that why you were saying what you said about the difference in efficacy between these and the Johnson one?
Yes, I'm worried about J&J, just because I think J&J will probably look about like these guys after 1 dose, right? And I'm worried that maybe we'll see durability wane and we won't see quite as much efficacy as I gave you a double dose. And J&J sort of rolled the dice. They knew they were a little bit late. They were working with a little bit slower of a platform than the mRNA platform. They're using an adenovirus platform. And so they knew that if they wanted to be in the game, they would have to do something special. So we're doing a single dose. And so that's what they came up with. But that's why we're saying take 2 doses. And if you have had the disease, go ahead and and get the vaccine.
Take 2 doses and call me in the morning. That's
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Take your dose early in the morning. And the other big thing about this is we're just starting to find out about how much protection you've got if you've been sick. And our initial results are you're about 52% protected for about 8 months. And after that, you better really take the vaccine because you're not so protected anymore. So hopefully that's hopeful. And then he'll hear the results as far as efficacy goes. Statistically, both vaccines are the same, and you'll see why in a second. It turns out they both do basically the same thing. So unsurprisingly, they both are incredibly effective. I mean, these results are off the charts. I've worked in this field for a long time. When you're talking about 95% effectiveness, there are only 2 vaccines in the world we've got right now that are this effective. Measles, one of them. And,
So, like, honestly, the part of this that surprises me is that you only need
Yeah.
you only need to be 50% effective to get approval.
That's what the threshold was, right? You said,
that's a little concerning.
We'd be so happy if we got 30%. These are 95%. It doesn't. It really doesn't get much better. 100% is obviously better, but nothing's like that. That's just not the immune system. And you can find yourself in every. I hope your audience can find themselves in every one of these. If you're under 18, you've got a little bit between. So people as early as the age of 12 have been vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine with the same kinds of results. We're still doing those trials. It's going to take until August till we get the 12 and overs done. It'll take until probably early or mid 2022 before we understand what's going on with groups under 12, especially those under 2. This becomes a childhood vaccine, for example. We really test those hard. And so before we get all the grade school children vaccinated, it will be 2022, just so you know, because it takes time. But you can see we do have inclusion exclusion. When you go through a clinical trial, what happens is you say, I'm interested in doing a clinical trial. And they say, come on in, let's make sure you qualify first. Are you pregnant? Well, yeah, I might get pregnant. Well, then in the case of Pfizer, they said, then we really don't want you. And it turns out that 30 people got pregnant anyway. So we have some information about the pregnant people as well. And it turns out the American Academy of Pediatrics has said, if you're pregnant, going to get pregnant, take this vaccine. It'll give your fetus protection, and it seems safe. And so they've gone ahead and talk to your doctor, but the average case in pregnancy, they want you to take the vaccine. Again, if you're the people who are at risk, that means they had things like diabetes or they were obese, and so you can see those were very well protected. Over 65, very well protected. 18 to 65, very well protected. Male and female, no real differences. Communities of color were slightly underrepresented. They were about 10% of the population. They're 15% of the normal population, slightly underrepresented, but certainly statistically significant. Everybody really is eligible to take this vaccine. They didn't look at platelet and they didn't look at anticoagulant people who are on factor and platelets, and they also excluded people under the age of 16. Those are not authorized. You have to probably join a clinical trial to do those at this point if you're in those categories. But immunocompromised were. So lots and lots of different groups were in these groups and found to be safe and effective. So the other really big thing is that it prevents severe infection, right? And that's what we're really interested in. If you turn out, if you get COVID and all you get is the sniffles, that's a pretty good deal, right?
Right.
So what we did is we actually tested and we let people go out there, and people who were severe, you can see, and Moderna actually had a tougher hurdle than Pfizer, and they actually came out better than Pfizer. So they're slightly more protective of severe diseases. But you can see the kinds of things they were worried about. Pfizer had as I recall, 9 total cases, one of which was someone who actually had the real vaccine, all the others were placebo. That gives you an 89% effectiveness rate. The only thing that person had, they didn't have to go to the hospital, unlike the people who were sick who had the placebo. They had 93% oxygenation level. But of the people who are on the placebo group, 6 of them got really sick and 3 of them went to the hospital. And in Moderna's cases, 1 of them died. So we're talking about really preventing severe disease, which is huge. That's a great outcome, right? So then here's the separation, right? It's great when you can do statistics and you can say, gosh, which one do I want to be on? And the answer is, if you look on the left-hand side, That's the incidence of COVID on the right hand, and then the blue line, which is pretty flat. That's people who had the vaccine. The red line, that's people who got the saline, and the black dots, those are the ones who got really, really sick. So you really want to be on that blue line, not on that red line. And
Gotcha.
you can see that interestingly, they actually did test people. Some people came in and then blew on the second dose. So they have a little bit of data about people who only took one dose over the course of time. It was 105 days, and that they were 82% effective, protective. But interestingly, also had a huge sample of people. Everyone got tested between the first and second dose. And there, between first and second dose, on a short-term basis, you're only 52% effective, which is why we really want you to take that second dose. But when you look closer, what's interesting is you get a separation after about day 12. So if you take this vaccine, for goodness sakes, don't go out and party on day one, because you're not protected. You just are going to get killed. You're just asking for trouble. Wait until at least day 12, and preferably wait for about 4 weeks, right? Wait until you have the second one, and then another 7 days after that, because that's the official test. What we did is we said, okay, take one vaccine, take one shot on the Pfizer stuff. Wait 21 days, take the second shot, then we wait 7 days and we look. So you got 28 days under the Pfizer shot.
Gotcha.
Moderna did a little bit differently. They did one dose. You wait 28 days, not 21 days. And then they waited 14 more days before they did the analysis. So for Moderna to get the full effect, you're still at 94%, but you got to wait 6 weeks. For Pfizer, 4 weeks. So if you have a choice and you're really concerned about the timing, I want to protect yourself faster, Pfizer is slightly better.
Okay.
So this is what Bob was talking about. And you can see, sure enough, day 2, man, you feel like crap. Sadly, about 60% of the time, you're going to feel really tired, headaches, chills. What's interestingly that even just taking a shot gives you a lot of these symptoms.
Right.
So you got to take those out. Statistically significant was the fever, the headache, and the muscle pain. So that was statistically significant. The other pieces were similar to the placebo effect of just getting a shot of saline. Although you should get ready to feel a little bit tired out. So that's what happens, and you can see that this is the difference between people who are older, like us, like me at least. It's you're talking about a 40% number instead of a 60% number. So that's a pretty big difference. And the same thing's true with the second dose. You have a 60% number instead of a 40, 50% number. What's interesting is that's reactogenicity, right? That means your body's responding to the vaccine. That's actually a good thing, because the vaccine cannot give you this disease, and it means your body's getting ready for something that really could give you the disease. What we really look for are serious adverse events, and this means a shutdown of organ systems, or a failure of your cardio system, your nervous system. You're worried about cancer, the neoplasms. You're getting worried about other infections. And you can see that the chances of that happening are 1 in 10,000 plus. And so that's really low. It's a very high safety level. And what we look for as clinicians in space is, what is the relative risk? Is it better to get the disease and forget the vaccine, or is it better to get the vaccine so you don't get the disease? Now, here's the numbers. Risk of dying from COVID in the United States today, 1 in 1,000.
Which is insane when you think about it.
I know, it's scary. It's the number 1 cause of death today. Number 1. It's just, geez Louise. We just sort of got to get away from us, and nature just is relentless, And then the risk of dying from a vaccine. Right now, we think we might have about one. Sadly, a medical doctor, 28, had an adverse event. Healthy before, died within 2 days of getting the second vaccine, as I recall. That's 1, and right now 21 million people have had the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, and about slightly less than that have had the Moderna vaccine. So we're getting to 1 in 50 million, 1 in 60 million kind of ranges now, versus 1 in 1,000. So if you have a choice, take the vaccine, unless your doctor says you're in a special, really, really special category, like a 1 in a million category.
Gotcha.
How long do just like a normal Joe, because I know like priorities are frontline, hospital, old people. At what point does like a 28-year-old white male get it? I'm just curious, because it's is it 3 months, is it 9 months? That's kind of a
Right now, we'll have enough material to vaccinate that person probably in the May timeframe.
Okay.
But our distribution system is so crappy that it may not actually get to that person until August.
Why don't they just have Amazon ship it? Usually
That's
2 days
great,
free
right? And just
shipping.
self-inject.
Just
It's
get
not
all
that hard.
get all the out of work venue people. Get
Oh yeah.
get all them up and running. They'll not only have everybody vaccinated in a weekend, they'll sell T-shirts and beer and make a fortune. It'll be great.
You're right. You're right. I mean, there's some things we have to do to really speed things up. Unfortunately, this thing is a bear. We'll talk about that in a second. The
Gotcha.
distribution turns out to be challenging. Anyway, great news. So this is right now. All these things aren't approved yet. They're under what they call emergency use authorization. So you're authorized to go ahead and vaccinate, but the approval is going to take another 6-7 months until they get a full approval. But you can see overall things are going great. Vaccine is really a nice. I mean, it's as good as data as we can hope for in the space. There are some unknowns, and we'll talk about those. But I don't want to overwhelm the fact that we've got a hell of a vaccine. Right? There are some unknowns still. We need longer-term safety data. On the effectiveness side, we'd like to know more about transmissibility. Typically, when you have reduction in observed cases, even mild cases, transmissibility goes down. But we want to make sure. Scalability, we don't know where some of our limits are yet, and whether we're going to have enough raw material in some cases. And we have durability questions. It's only been out there 8 months, so that's all the data we got. So with that, let's take a look at what happens when you start to combine two things that could go wrong. And this is the situation where we're going to look at efficacy. And the first question we got about efficacy is, okay, we checked things out and we found out that, we sent people out and it turns out that we reduced the amount of disease, of symptoms. That's what our job was. We reduced the amount of symptoms. That's an easy hurdle to get. If you feel sick, you go to the doctor, take the PCR test, you got the disease. Then they say, okay, were you on the vaccine or not on the vaccine? Well, most of the time, 95% of the time, if you were on the vaccine, you didn't get sick, versus the guys who had just the saline. So what we want to find out though is whether or not you reduce transmission or not. And you can see the difference here. If you've got a 95% reduction in symptoms, you can see the purple line, and you get to herd immunity. You start to get a reduction in cases, but not as fast and not as smoothly as if you got reduction in transmission. The other big reason that if you know that you're reducing transmission is you don't have to wear your mask anymore. You get the vaccine, no more masks because you're reducing. You don't have to worry about transmitting anymore.
Wait a minute.
Huge to know.
Wait a minute. Does that mean I can't assault people at Costco anymore on the weekends?
No. What it means is we don't know yet. We don't know yet. But we hope that if we really reduce transmission as well as just symptoms, that we can start to say, okay, you get the vaccine, great news. You're not going to get sick. Plus, you're not going to give it to anybody. We still have to do the work though. We haven't demonstrated this. We're probably going to know more about this in April. And unfortunately, we won't know quite as carefully as we do with the really carefully controlled clinical trials. We're going to have to look at it in real life. That means we're going to have to look at, what was the transmission rate in this old age home where we had about 100 of the same kind of patients versus this where that weren't vaccinated in this other one. And so we're going to have to look at real world data, and that's always a little bit tricky, but you can see the difference in lives saved. For this year, if we have a symptoms only vaccine, about 200,000 lives will be saved. And if we have symptoms plus transmission, probably about 350,000. And that's huge. It turns out the transmission really pushes, we can go through some of the math eventually if you want to, I can show you in detail, but it pushes the exponentiality, right? Symptoms are more linear, but transmission is something that is nonlinear and actually grows very, very rapidly. So if you hit transmission, you're really much more effective than if you only hit symptoms. The other thing that could go wrong simultaneously to the transmission question is durability, right? It might be that we have to take one of these things like we have the flu every year, because we start off with a great protection and then it slowly degrades over time. Now, we've just done a big study in San Diego on this, 186 samples. We don't think that's the case, but we don't know. And so we're still figuring this out. And the epidemiology community and biology community is completely split. Some of them say we're going to be fine for life. Others, just with a single vaccine. Other people are saying, it's probably going to be every year or so, every 2 years. So it's pretty much down the middle, 50-50. So we're going to have to find out. It's the only time will tell, as it says. But basically, you can see across the top, we've got flu that lasts only about 150 days. SARS lasts for about 2 years. MERS lasts for 4 years. Interestingly, you've got something in the middle. There are 4 other coronavirus families. They only last for about a year. So SARS and MERS are closer to what we are worried have with our COVID. But we've got 4 other things that only take every year you got to get revaccinated for. And then measles, you get vaccinated once and you're good for life, pretty much.
So now what causes that big difference in the time frame? Like, is that because of how quickly they mutate and change and all that stuff?
Yeah, there are 2 things. First is the host condition. Sometimes your immune system just gets tired and decides not to support those antibodies. And then there's a virus component that says, okay, I'm going to mutate around and I'll find my way through and eventually weaken the vaccine. Those are the 2 options, basically. And sadly, we don't know that much about the immune system. When I was in college, we were just finding out a lot about it. That doesn't seem so far long ago, frankly, but it turned out to be 40, 50 years ago. But I thought it was pretty modern at the time. So we don't really know that much about the immune system or that much about durability, frankly. We're still finding out things every day. So you've got efficacy and durability. They come together. What could happen? What could go wrong? Well, here's what things should look like, right? You got great vaccine efficacy. We know the threshold needs to be about more than 85% efficacious to get herd immunity, and durability and acceptance. It'd be nice to have that high, right? More, hopefully more than a few years, so that once you get it, you don't have to get it all the time. So if the vaccine efficacy is low and the durability and acceptance rates are low, you're going to be in pandemic. Even if you got a vaccine, you're still going to have issues where you got flare-ups and you've got a lot of people sick, right? Low efficacy with low durability and acceptance. As that efficacy starts to go up and you get higher and higher efficacy, what happens is you're able to reduce the number of outbreaks you've got until finally it sort of bubbles along and you have outbreak. And that's the way it looks when you've got a very highly efficacious vaccine, but not very much durability. So every once in a while I see a flu outbreak. You see, these outbreaks occurring. That's what happens in those situations. And on the other side, you can have a very low efficacy, but everyone's taking the vaccine, the supply is good, the durability lasts forever. And what happens then is you basically have sort of low-grade fevers and stuff that bothers you. And we have this for yellow fever, for example. Others where it's endemic. The vaccine sort of 60% protective, not great, but acceptance is pretty high in those areas, and so we basically are managing with lots of different drugs together, lots of different vaccines together, and we're a lot of people doing MPI work with. In this case, they're worried about effluent, but in our case, worried about with the lungs. So what's great is if suppose you get a really high vaccine efficacy and you got really great durability, and we've got that chance, right? Then you're in that green box, eradication opportunity. Now, there's sort of 2 options you can have as a big country. First, you can decide we're going to get rid of this thing. We're not going to have any problems anymore with this COVID thing. And there are countries that are trying to go for that, right? Australia's going for that. New Zealand's going for that. China's going for that. Taiwan, Korea, they're going to go for eradication. They don't want any part of this anymore. We probably can't get there. We got too much of this stuff in our space for the short term. Even if we got a really super effective vaccine, even if everybody takes the thing, we probably can't get to eradication for years and years because of how high the level is.
Well, yeah, and you've talked about some of the challenges with that before. With and again, it's the acceptance part more than anything else.
We'll get into that. Yeah, exactly right. And so basically, what's interesting is there's going to be a difference between if you go to a country that's really into eradication, they're going to be really sticky about whether they're going to let you in or not. So if you want to go and visit Taiwan, you're going to have to go through all kinds of hurdles to get in. Versus if you're just trying to go to Britain, I'll say, sure, come on in. You're about the same level we are.
Clearly, which is how we wound up in Ann Arbor. That's
That's right. You can come on in. It's fun. The water's great. So there'll be a little bit of a difference in the behavior of those guys. We'll go into that in a second. So here's the pathway, right? The pathway is right now we're sort of in that lower red corner where we've got we don't have very many people vaccinated yet, but we have a really, really great vaccine. So we're moving up that blue curve and we're getting to yellow probably around May, where we're going to have outbreaks, but there'll be enough people vaccinated that we're going to start to see a decrease in the amount of COVID. And then finally, when more and more people get it, we could even be in the control region, Well, we'll see what happens, but I think, depending on some things, we could even be in a control region by the end of next year in certain areas. I don't think we're going to get there that fast for the whole United States, but for
Gotcha. Okay.
some areas, we'll be all right. So here's what, now let's take a look at that box and eradication opportunities. You can see that basically you're kind of, even with a great vaccine, if not enough people take it, you're going to be in a kind of controlled pandemic instance where the vaccine doesn't work quite well enough. You're not distancing enough. You're not doing enough other stuff, and you're going to continue to have, a pandemic environment with spikes every once in a while. But it's not going to. At least you won't have to worry about a million people dying. It's more like 200, 300,000 people.
Oh,
Which
is that
better?
all? Yeah,
It's better.
it's better.
But you hope we're going to get out of that box, right? Then you could have recurring COVID outbreaks where you've got really a great vaccine, but you don't have very good durability. You don't have enough people taking it, and so you're going to have people suddenly realizing, the Hasidic community suddenly has a huge outbreak, or Southern California has a huge outbreak because we didn't realize that people who are migrant workers who are working in the fields were bringing it into the cities, and we had that problem already in California, and that could happen there. Or we could have just recurring low-grade symptoms where you got pretty good control, but you need to still have quite a bit of medicines to kind of help you out through all these symptoms of sniffles and colds and headaches and fevers. But you're not getting sick and overwhelming in hospitals. Or you could even get to normalcy, and there, that would be great. Now, here are the things that could happen. I was talking about the fact that you need to kind of have several things happening at once. You've got problems with durability and safety. We've got problems with we've got scalability issues. Plus, we've got some efficacy issues. When those things start to come together, and the vaccine, the virus actually kind of beats us in 2 or 3 of these quadrants simultaneously, then you got to start to worry about whether you're going to get what they call drift, and that's what this looks like. You got a great vaccine in that upper right-hand corner. What could go wrong? And the answer is, well, if you've got a lot of mutations, it could move you from one that you've got one vaccine that worked really well to needing several vaccines, or tweaking the vaccines, or having quite so that you're going after the different parts of the mutation that are problematic in your part of the world. So you might, for example, go to Africa and they say, well, you're going to Africa, they've got this part of COVID, so you're going to have a different vaccine because you want to go and visit that. For example, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
No, I was going to say. So I mean, like basically what I'm seeing here is that we have the potential to get to like kind of where we are with the flu today, where last year a bunch of people got together in a room and said, okay, we think it's going to be family A strain 1, family B strain 2. Go ahead and mass produce those and go.
Yep, that's right. Unfortunately, the flu is more predictable because we see it in birds first, then it moves to humans. On this case, we have to actually monitor the genetic sequence of the virus much more carefully, because it's not moving between avian and human population, it's moving human to human. And at that point, you need to understand exactly what you're dealing with genetics, not what predictions.
I always thought humans were a bad idea. Just one of nature's mistakes.
Well,
Usually are.
So then you got the issue where suppose you don't have very much mutation, but the immune response varies over time, right? Suppose the elderly people have to take 3 or 4 shots, where the young people only have to take 1. Or if you've had certain diseases, or you're heavyweight, or you've got diabetes, you might have to take more doses than others. And you have to constantly sort of monitor whether your antigen levels, your antibody levels are up high enough, right? You're going to take a little test and say, oh, we're really sorry, but you're not quite there yet. You're not really as protected as you want to be, so we're going to have to give you a booster. And you're constantly, sort of monitoring that, getting a booster, right? Because it's still a good vaccine. The mutation rate's low, but your immune response, isn't as durable as you're hoping. And then finally, you could be in a situation where both those things happen, and then you're talking about lots of vaccines, lots of disease variation. All having to come together to help protect the group, even as you start off with one vaccine working for everybody. So we can't have this drift that occurs. So here is what our Achilles heel is, right? Everyone has sort of a weak spot, and our weak spot is something that we actually have to do, and that is that every antigen that we're using, so every vaccine basically uses the same antigen. We've taken, if you look at that little spike protein, there's a stalk, and there's 2 big areas that are occurring in the stock. The first is the binding domain. That's the whole area that on top there where it sticks to our cell. And then there's actually the binding motif, and that's actually where the cell-to-cell interaction occurs at the ACE2 binding site, which is happening in most of our organs and cells in our organs. So we have gone and we've decided, that spike, that's got to be consistent, right? It's going to have to fit a very particular kind of configuration. So we know that's going to be conserved. So let's go after that. And we actually have to do that. If you don't, you can get bad adverse events because you're going and binding different parts of the virus. That changes its configuration, can change its whole behavior in the body. So you actually do want to go after the spike. The issue is that if you look at all of our medicines, all of our diagnostic tests, and all of our vaccines, they all go after the spike.
I see. Yeah, we're kind of hoping that never changes.
And if that never changes, we're in great shape. So that's what we're hoping. That was the assumption, right? Go after that spike. And there's the N terminal. That's the NTD. If you look in the upper left-hand corner of the more enlarged diagram, and the RBD there, that's the binding domain. And that is what they call the S. That's part of the S1 part of the spike protein, and they have the S2, which is that rest of that big piece, all that other piece. So AstraZeneca decided to take that whole thing and reproduce it, and that's the mRNA you're getting from AstraZeneca. It's the same RNA strand you get with CanSino. It's the same you get with the Russian vaccine, Sputnik. If you get eventually Clover and Novio get introduced as that's the same thing. It's this full spike protein. And for Moderna, Pfizer, J&J, Novavax, and Sanofi, we're using the same thing, except we've got a couple of extra prolines. You can see the K986P and the V987 proline. They're there to stabilize it a little bit so that it's more reactive. The Novavax and Sanofi also have a stabilizing link between the NTD, RBD, and the S1 and the S2. They call that the fold in the middle there, and that fold is being supported more so that the antigen is more reactive and more stable. But you can see that in every case, the reason Moderna and Pfizer are pretty much the same is because they're pretty much the same in terms of results. That's what you're getting. So that's just so everybody knows, these are very, very similar responses that we're looking for in the medicines and vaccines. So here is a blow up, right? So we had the spike. Here's what the spike actually looks like in 3D. And, like we said, remember that upper, so here it all is. You can see that basically most of this spike protein is blue. There's a little bit of green and a little bit of yellow. Where's the most green and where's the most yellow and orange? Do you see where it is?
Off to the left there, yeah.
You know where the RBD was and the N-terminal protein was? That's the area we had to make sure never mutated. Remember? And it's got even though overall coronaviruses don't mutate much, the area that is mutating the most in is the area we are most vulnerable to.
You're just chock full of goodness, aren't you, Fred? You're just.
It's like, how did this thing do this to us, right? It shouldn't do this. It shouldn't be like this, but it is. So sadly, the area that is most mutagenic is also the area that we target and we are most sensitive to for mutagenesis. And the other big problem is that we're flying blind on this because we don't actually genetically sequence most of the virus that's around it.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're lagging way behind everybody else on this, right?
We just are crappy at what we so we do a lot of it, but on a per capita basis and for amount of virus that's in the area, we don't do nearly enough, right?
So I guess that just begs the obvious question: why is that?
Yeah, you know why it is? It's because we have been spoiled. In the United States, we've been spoiled. We sit there and we say, we got this thing under control. We're monitoring the flu. We're monitoring smallpox. We're monitoring polio. And you know what? Everything looking pretty good. And so in 6 months or so, I'll give you a report and tell you how we did. Well, when so that's sort of monitoring stuff that's in control. And we're probably the best in the world at that. The problem is now we got an active outbreak. And we just aren't ready. We just said, wait a minute, we're waking up. And we're realizing, holy cow, we don't have any infrastructure to actually be active about this stuff.
So what you're saying basically is, as long as all the server lights are blinking green, we're really, really good at that.
We're really good with stuff.
But we're not really good at disaster recovery and contingency planning, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but if we have to really respond in real time and actually do something against something that's really active, we just are not ready. And so you can see we're analyzing less than 0.3% of all the positive samples that come through here. UK 7.4%. Australia. If you go to Australia and you come down with this, there's a better than 50% chance your actual virus will be completely synthesized, and know exactly what you've got, what its history is, and so on. And it really helps to know that.
So now, I mean, I guess the other part of this is, Bob's always the math and numbers guy, but is some of this just due to economy of scale? Like what does that less than 0.3% from a raw numbers perspective?
About 50,000 a year. We do about 50,000 full sequences a year. UK does about 150,000. So that gives you a sense.
Okay. So yeah, So I was wondering numbers versus percentage.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. The numbers, we are number 2 in the world. The problem is we've got 5 times the population and 4 times the number of viral loads the UK does. And so we're just getting hammered because we just don't follow what's going on. And it turns out that's really pretty important, because you have to know exactly what you're going after. These viruses come and go pretty quick. So the old Hunan virus, the old Wuhan virus, that we all created the spike protein against,
right?
That's been dead and gone for a year. That was gone in March last year from the United States. It was completely wiped out by the European guys.
But by the time we even noticed it, yeah.
Right. There may be a sort of 1% level that's still endemic, but that's been overcome by these new viruses.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, because that's the interesting, like the mutation rate is interesting to me, is that you're looking at about 1 mutation every 10 transmissions.
Yeah.
That's pretty high.
Yeah, well, yeah. Compared to, you're right, because these, that's right. It is pretty high, but it's compared to most viruses. They'll, these viruses have 2 big things. Number one, they've got an editor, so it actually looks at every substitution, makes sure you're not
right,
and it's not only 1 strand. The flu virus has 4 strands and no editors. You got a lot more opportunity for shift, what they call shift and drift.
Right.
So it is about 10 times less than the flu, 10 to 100 times less than the flu, believe it or not. Flu does that much more.
Right.
So it's better than the flu. So the issue is that we don't know what's going to happen when we start to put this virus under selective pressure, right? And selective pressure means we've got these new medicines, we've got these new vaccines, and all of a sudden, you're going to start to kill off a lot of viruses, but the ones that survive are going to be really well suited to fight your vaccine, to fight and they'll be the ones that reproduce. And so we could start to produce some superbugs that we have a lot of trouble with.
Well, yeah, and you've talked about that here before, where like that's the danger of, the remdesivir, the Regeneron, that kind of stuff, is if you don't knock it completely out of somebody's system with it. It's like anything else. We've talked about antibiotic resistant whatever for quite some time now becoming a problem. So, this is no different. Like if you don't completely knock it out of your system, out of the person's system, all you're doing is teaching it how to fight that, mutate, and become stronger.
That's the whole thing. And it turns out that these mutations are actually reducing Regeneron's effectiveness by about 30-40%, and Lilly's by somewhat more than that already. Let's take a look at these mutations.
Gotcha.
Here's what the actual domain of the receptor binding motif looks like, and we've mapped out what we're concerned about, and which of these genes we're concerned about. And the 2 things that have happened on the B1.1.7 variant is they've actually, it's a deletion. So they've actually reduced the number of genes, actually deleted 2 genes. And the problem was that with that deletion, it actually increased the amount of replication. And so now you've got things that are mutating faster than normal, and because these are because they're reproducing faster, they're surviving more, and so you're seeing more and more mutations adding up and piling on to these deleted gene areas, if that makes sense. So you get stacking of genes occurring. Believe it or not, there are 17 new mutations on this one variant. So they've actually, because it reproduces so much faster, it actually can preserve a lot of these mutations longer than normally would occur, and so we're getting a lot of these very rare mutations that we didn't think were going to survive, and they are. And so you can see what's happening is that the spike mutation rates are really high. They're 4 times higher than the rest of the virus and 2 times higher than the rest of the spike protein. And they can see on that graph, which shows the amount of isolates that are causing the variant. The big issue for us is that if you increase your R naught by 0.4 to 0.7, so we're talking about moving from 2.5 to 3.2, that increases your herd immunity. Remember, herd immunity was 1 minus 1 over R naught. So all of a sudden, that target for herd immunity just got, 30% higher, 40% higher. And when you're trying to go for 75% herd immunity and you got to increase that by another 20, 30%, you're talking about rarefied air, right?
Right. So I mean, and I guess that's just to clarify that, because you've got it in bold on both those, is that it doesn't increase the ability of herd immunity to happen. It increases the requirement for herd immunity.
That's right. Yeah. It's a lot harder to hit it because you got to have so much more protection out there because it's so much more transmissible. Chances are the virus is going to find somebody, and that's what's going to happen between in basically February and March. We're gonna think, we're used to this COVID thing. I can take that on. I used to go to the ballpark every once in a while. I used to go to this bar and restaurant and sit down and have a nice meal or take stuff out. Or I went to Myers every week and everything was fine. Don't do that stuff because this stuff will get you. I mean, it's literally I'll show you what happened in England. It's scary. So at any rate, that's one big variant. That is the British variant. That causes a lot more transmissibility. The other one was the South African variant. South Africa tests about the same rate we do, slightly more, but about the same rate we do. And you can see the yellow bars. If you look here, you have the white bar. That's the variant that's coming through. That was the major variant. That's the major gene type that was in COVID, right? And then you see a little bit of blue coming in, a little bit of green coming in. And then about October 19th or so, they had 1% of the population that they were worried about with a new variant. This is the variant. The actual strain is called the 1352 strain. And you can see that, 1%, but November 2nd, 80%. And that's what happens when you don't test enough. All of a sudden, you just get completely overwhelmed by a brand new strain. It turns out that this strain has a mutation 484. Right at that, see where that binding site is? Remember that the picture of the spike protein? It's that. Yeah, I don't know if you can see the E484.
Yep.
It's right at that spot where the mutation occurred. And we're really sensitive to this. All our medicine is really sensitive to this, and it binds more firmly. And it actually binds more firmly than we're used to, and it infects the young in a much more virulent way. And we think it might be in such a sweet spot that it might start in reducing vaccine efficacy. We're just testing that now.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was that second point is the one that's concerning.
Yeah, and that's the thing we're really worried about. What we have tested so far. So what we do is we take your people who have recovered, right, and we take their from the Wuhan virus or from an old virus strain. We take their blood. We isolate the antibodies, the neutralizing antibodies in there, and then we test it against the variant. And we also test people who've been vaccinated against the new variant. We put it in the petri dish and see does it kill it or does the thing survive? The B1.1.7, it died. So that's positive against the Moderna and Pfizer viruses and against natural plasma. This one, we're less sure. That's worrisome. So we're going to have to go through, and what matters isn't so much what happens in a petri dish; it matters what happens in your body. And so right now, J&J has a big South African trial on, and they're going to test whether or not we can get rid of it, whether we really are protected against this variant or not. And we'll know that in about 2-3 weeks. So that's where we're holding our breath with, and you can see why we're holding our breath, right? So here's what happened in South Africa. That is the gray line, and you can see that August 8th. You can see that everything started to go up, right? And then they said, okay, let's hunker down now. Let's put in distancing situation. Let's get our act together. Distancing, more mask wearing. Let's get this thing in the bud. And sure enough, it went down. Everything was going good. And then all of a sudden, you can see right around November 15th, when 80% of the virus became this new variant, because our protective measures didn't work. Same thing happened in the UK, right? up, spike, down. Everything was going well. November 15th, no, October 30th, they said, "Oh my gosh, we gotta lock things in." They had a huge lockdown. I mean, much bigger than we're talking about. Not going out after 8 o'clock at night.
Oh, yeah, no, the UK went pretty hardcore.
We're talking about much more aggressive than what we did in Michigan, for sure, and what we did in the United States generally. And you can see it went down for a while. We're beating this thing, and all of a sudden just took off again. And we'll see that in the next slide here. Same thing, right? The blue is all the other variants, and you can see, that around November 15th, they were starting to go up, and they locked it down. And the blue starts to die off, right? You see how small those blue dots are by December. It says 1812. That's December 18th, 2020. The blue line is only this big now. It's not the whole thing, right? So they were really killing off the blue virus. Great news. Problem is the orange one came in and took over, and so the new one meant that the old blue lockdowns, the old new measures, the old new vaccinations, the old new medicines weren't working with the new purple, with the new orange. And so they are in free fall right now.
So does that mean? So I mean, like, one of the things that you've mentioned on previous shows is, we essentially have the capability with the efficacy of a vaccine, with masks and hand washing and social distancing and that kind of stuff. Does that mean that is no longer as effective with this, or does this mean that it might be a little bit of that and a little bit of people being stupid? Like what? Like what?
It's mostly our behavior. The truth is that we get tired of wearing masks and all this stuff.
Oh, yeah, so fatigue is real.
And we start to feel confident, right? And then we start to, we start to do things that, become normal practice. And all of a sudden the normal practice doesn't work anymore. And then we get shocked. And that's what happened in Britain, right? I mean, they are in full panic mode right now. I've rarely seen guys in this field who are as nervous as I've seen them, and since we'll work with Ebola. They're the guys in the UK, guys in Edinburgh, who I know, guys in London, guys in Cambridge, they're as nervous about this situation as I saw them, when we were working with much more deadly viruses. And that makes me worried, because these guys know what they're doing, and they're worried. And so I was really, for about 2 weeks there, I said, we got this thing, right? They said, oh man, we got the vaccine, we're talking. And I go to this conference, and I'm realizing, darn it.
Here comes Billy Mays, but wait, there's more.
So now it's time for counterattack, right? We have our stuff. Now they're going to counterattack. I think we're still going to win this thing, but it's harder than I thought it was going to be. Every time I underestimate this thing. So you can see what Great Britain did, right? They put in new distancing measures that are really tough. I mean, you're not even allowed to see much of your family. Groups of 6 aren't allowed to get together. Larger than 6 aren't allowed.
Oh yeah, I've got a friend that lives in London, and he's been.
It's Ontario. Don't get too excited, Fred.
No, not Ontario. Actually, London. And he's been posting about this all along, and it's been interesting because he's been very vocal about it's almost been a little bit refreshing to see his posts, just because people there are as dumb, if not dumber, than we are here in some cases. Because here's a picture of the pub at the end of the street. And look, everybody's in there. They're all sitting at the bar. Nobody's wearing a mask. Everybody's being stupid. And he's been railing about this all year. And so when they just proposed this, what is it now? This brand new level 5 lockdown.
Level 5. Every city we're talking about every part of the UK under level 5 lockdown.
Yeah.
I'm middle of countryside.
They apparently started with he's right smack in the middle of it.
Oh yeah, London, Edinburgh, Glasgow. Yep. Those guys are just getting hammered. So at any rate, they came out with all sorts of new things. They said from now on, if there's a vaccine available, we're going to take it. 1 dose, 2 doses, do what you can, get your vaccine. If you want to mix vaccines, you go ahead and mix vaccines. We're gonna set aside whole hospitals and really doesn't make COVID. They are just throwing everything at this thing right now because they're in full panic mode. I mean, and I think we could be in that same situation at the end of February. I hate to say it, but because history has a way of repeating itself, and I think we're going to have trouble containing this thing until we get the vaccine, and we're going to have the same problem that we have. This new variant going to come through like wildfire. So here is what they did. This is AstraZeneca's vaccine. Get a load of the difference between Moderna and Pfizer and AstraZeneca. This is what it was approved on. The AstraZeneca vaccine, based on the data so far, 70% effective after 2 doses. And if you knock out, the patients who are actually under 55 and under, that number goes down to 62%. And if you only get one vaccine, one dose, it's 52% effective. And you have to wait 8 to 12 weeks for the first and second dose. So you're talking about a huge population under a lot of pressure who are going to be only 50% protected for the next 8 to 12 weeks with this thing. And then they're probably going to have to switch over to Pfizer and Moderna. That's why they said if you can switch over after you've taken this one. They had 0.2. Remember I said, our serious adverse events for Pfizer and Moderna are 1 in a million. This is we're talking about a couple in 1,000. So big difference. And that's because these guys are, as I said, full panic mode. They're still testing this. And when it gets approved by the United States, they'll have better cases and they'll have more and more statistically significant stuff. But right now, if you have a choice between Pfizer, Moderna, or AstraZeneca, there is no choice. You take that Pfizer, Moderna shot every time because it's that much better.
So it's been in the news pretty recently where so there was this, there was allegedly there was, because now it turns out there may not have been, but there was a stockpile of doses kind of held back to make sure that people who got the first dose were going to be able to get their second dose.
Yep.
And hey, let's just go ahead and release all of them because it's better that more people get 1 dose than we guarantee that people get 2 doses. Is that sound thinking? Is that?
I'll show you the analysis. I actually was involved in some of the analysis. I can actually show you the analysis. Let's just jump. I think I can do that. I gotta wait. If you want it, I can jump to that now.
Yeah, we can. We're good. Yeah, we can get to it whenever we get to it. Yeah.
So now we've talked a little bit about that vaccine, how much is prevented by the vaccine. Now let's go into the percent of the population vaccinated, and you're talking about actually getting the vaccine into people's arms. And there are 3 challenges: production, distribution, and whether people actually take the thing. So let's take a little look at each of those factors. The first thing you're going to talk about is why we could start to look like Britain and why I'm worried about it. We're going to have a peak. We're going to come down a little bit off that peak. We're going to say, we're getting back in control. That's good. And then the new variants are going to come out and we're going to have another bump in March. And that bump is going to be really scary because we're going to be, you can see that basically my projection was 3,000 deaths will overwhelm about 10% of the country. We were having over 3,000 deaths a day and California was overwhelmed.
Right.
So that gives you a sense of what that looks like. Arizona is also overwhelmed now. So and what happens if you get to 6,000 or 7,000 deaths a day is you start to overwhelm large parts of the country. And when you start to overwhelm the hospitals in large parts of the country, your death rate just goes right to the roof. I mean, in Italy, it was times 10.8 times what would normally happen if you were able to actually take care of the people who got sick. And in Italy, they had to do triaging and said, okay, so this guy's not going to make it, move to the next person.
Well, yeah, I mean, and there's a ripple effect there because, I mean, if your hospital is full of, COVID patients on ventilators, somebody has a heart attack, where are they going to go? I mean, yeah.
No chance, right? And so that's what's going to happen to us is we're going to start to feel some of this pressure if some of the hospitals in our region start to get overwhelmed. We're going to say, hey, gosh, I was supposed to go in for a knee replacement. I can't do my knee replacement. I have some chest pain. I don't really want to go to the hospital. And then you're rock in a hard place. The big thing is that the hospital guys, they're worried about saving lives now. And so if they're all working, trying to save everyone's life with COVID, they're not taking care of a lot of the vaccinations that are occurring. They're doing the best they can to split that up, right? But they don't have that much staff available. Everyone's working like hell, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Oh, yeah.
So they're getting tired. And so you got hospital staff to really do vaccination. You got a lot of new training requirements. You've got a lot of other treatments that also are limited, and all of a sudden you just get a bad kind of cycle of more cases, less treatment, more cases, less treatment, until finally you get a lot more deaths. The same thing's true about the regulators, right? That's what happened in the UK. They went ahead and said, okay, AstraZeneca, you cobble together 4 different studies, figure it all out, give us the best we can. Okay, you made it over 50%, you're good to go. We could get into that situation in the United States. I hope not. And of course, we haven't given much funding to the states either. So all those things are starting to add up, and I'm afraid we're going to get in a bad situation in the next few weeks. So how do you manage that? So if you there are two different scenarios I ran with my model. The first was to say, we celebrate the fact that we have vaccines, we relaxed everything, we say everyone's open, go ahead, feel free to go to bars, we're going to have a vaccine, people will be safe soon enough. If you do that, you're on the red line. And that red line is not a good line to be on. We'll be at 5,000 to 6,000 deaths a day across the United States. But in fact, peaking could be as much as 70,000 deaths a day if we relax everything we're doing and also open the whole economy up because we're happy we got the vaccine, right? That's a possible scenario. And there are some states that will do that. And I work with some of those states, where they're saying, Fred, we're home free, we got the vaccine. Other states are saying, no, and we want to really get this under control so we don't have as much of a hurdle to come through with. And that, frankly, Michigan is more like that. And we'll get that in a second. You can see that the difference here is you could have 69% more deaths a day if you don't do anything versus if you do something between now and April. That's a big difference, right? Because you're talking about having surges upon surges upon surges. You're allowing, never have a break. You're always, increasing. We were on that road from basically October until Christmas. If we can allow that to continue, it looks bad. If we start to control it and get on the green line, we're that much better. Now, here's the other factor. Let's inject vaccine, so to speak, into the scenario. What happens is that if you're on the red line and you inject vaccines, but you don't allocate them very effectively, you say first come, first serve, whoever gets it, that's fine. You'll find that, and you started off at a really high level, you'll find that basically you're going to have 2.25 times more deaths, and your GDP will suffer, be about minus 20%, versus the states that go ahead and actually try to reduce the level that they're at a starting point of the vaccine, and then go down from there. Their economies actually will do pretty well, and they'll save a lot of lives. The really sad thing about being on the red line is that, believe it or not, when you get to that 1,000 deaths a day, what happens to your R is you never get that R for a sustained period below 1, which means you're reproducing more than you're killing it off, and you start to hover, and it takes you literally years to get down to herd immunity. If you start at too high a point, you can't break the cycle. And that's scary to watch when you run the cycles and you go, God, how am I going to kill this thing off? And the answer is, well, 2025, 2027, finally, and you go, God, I can't take it, please. So that's why it's so important to do everything you can now. And why Biden's saying, that 100 days, 100 million, that's not big enough. We got to go bigger than that. We got to get to 150 million injections by that point. We have to do.
Is that even technically possible, though?
Well, we'll get to that in a second. And the answer is that first 100 days for Biden is going to be super important. If he doesn't get someone in place at HHS and FDA, if he sort of spins his tires with the Senate, man, it is going to be bad for a long time. Now, here's what Michigan looks like. So Michigan is on that green line, right? We're getting our death rate down.
Okay.
So that's good. Well, here's what the rest of the U.S. looked like in that blue line, right? And you can see the U.S. just kept going and going and going. Michigan, they had this big lockdown on November 17th. Most of the rest of the states didn't do that. And so we actually dropped.
Well, I'm aware. Allegedly, there are people that are driving down to Ohio to hit bars and restaurants and that kind of stuff. Allegedly,
who would do that?
Hypothetically speaking, I don't know. I've heard stories.
Everyone that watches Letterkenny, by the way, is laughing at you for when you say allegedly. If you don't know what I'm talking about,
yeah, I know. Allegedly,
okay, all right. Something to do with an ostrich. I don't know. It's crazy.
What's interesting is the border, along the borders. If you look at orange, and if you look at across the border at Ohio and Indiana, those things are red and orange. And same thing with the Wisconsin border. So we're lucky we're a peninsula, right? We don't have any of this border stuff happening. Canada's all pretty is even lighter than the light yellow we've got across most of what we touch. Whereas Ohio, Indiana, Chicago, Illinois, those guys are all on fire, as is Wisconsin. And so what's interesting is you just see that. So in our middle of our state, we're pretty well protected, but it's the borders that are getting overrun. That Toledo corridor, you can see that Toledo corridor, right north. You're right. So the data is supporting your theory that allegedly people may be going to Ohio to get a couple drinks here and there.
What's going on up there in Luce County, though?
Oh man, yeah. So
That's kind of a
It's
standout.
interesting. I looked at the data, and they only have about 1,500 people in Moose County. So even like one case, one death, they only had one death in Moose County in this period. And even that threw you into the worst category possible in the whole United States. So it may just be a sampling area where you're talking about such a small population.
Statistics and percentage, yeah.
Eventually, it'll average back out. But right now, some of those counties are overrepresented, sadly, in the UP. Yeah, but overall, the big question was November 17th. Was that a good idea? Right now, the data indicates, wow, it really helped out because we're right way down on the curve. So what happens when you get into really bad trouble? It doesn't matter what the law says, right? It does help. But the truth is that if we start to go on to 20,000 cases a day, 30,000 cases a day, people aren't going to want to go to your business anyway. They're going to be too scared to go, and basically the law, does create a barrier to some extent. But the truth is, most of it's about whether people are feeling safe or not. And so right now, people are feeling a lot safer, and that's good. But do your stuff now, because I'll tell you, in 3 weeks you're going to be overwhelmed with this new.
I mean, sadly, I wish I believed what you just said to be true, Frank. But I mean, the sad reality is, I mean, you look, because we've talked about this on the show for the last few weeks now with all the studies that have come out, that basically it is the worst, most annoying, crappiest people by and large that are the ones going out to restaurants and bars.
But you don't want to.
Where they're open.
Yeah. So again, it hurts your business if you got that kind of population in your bar. And I can understand why these restaurant owners are so frustrated, because our numbers are down, numbers have gotten better. We did a bit, but you can see how much variation there is. I mean, there's some variations like they're just see those little lines that are really completely over the red line. The dark red line shows the average, but there's some real high sort of spikes. You sort of go, whoa, is that a data factor, or is that really where we're at, and we're just not testing enough, right? And you sort of say, wait a minute, what's the real number? And if all those pink lines are really close to the dark red line, I feel a lot more comfortable. Well, I can understand sort of and I said I don't work for Michigan, but I can sort of understand why, if I was the guy in the seat deciding whether to shut down or not, I'd be looking at those outliers going, geez Louise, what's the truth? Right. It's a little bit tight. So overall, I think Michigan did the right thing. And I got no horse in this race at all. But basically, we drove the numbers down statistically, and the rest of the U.S. is really in bad shape. Here is what is going to really change. So if you are in businesses or doing the things on the far right hand side, don't do that anymore. When
no buffets, get out of here, Fred.
No buffet for you, Bob.
I miss buffets.
No, I need to.
Okay. Yeah, don't do this stuff, because if the new variant comes in the way we think it's going to come in, and you got a few weeks before it really starts to pick up. But if it comes in the way we think it's going to come in, this stuff is going to kill you. I mean, it really is going to be different.
So, and I think that's so, and I've said this all along. I think one of the issues that like bars and restaurants have in general is I truly think they have a PR problem.
I feel badly for them.
I do, because the reality is with anybody who pops positive, because again, you have the worst people on the planet that are out doing this stuff, that are if you are the kind of person that is likely to go out, you are the kind of person that is likely to go out to a bar or restaurant
and probably be asymptomatic, sadly.
Right. And so, but if you pop positive, you are more likely to say, oh yeah, I was at Temple Bar, or I was at Old Shillelagh, as opposed to, oh yeah, I was in my buddy's basement with 25 other people.
Right.
You're never going to throw your buddy under the bus, but you'll throw the bars and restaurants under the bus.
And that's what's happening. Yeah, people want to see each other, and they're getting together, and just be aware that this new mutation's coming through, the new variant's coming through, and so the stuff that's currently in yellow, that becomes orange. The stuff that's in orange, that just gets off the charts.
And bottom right, Bob, no karaoke. That's just how that goes.
Garbage. I just think these are funny. Like, they it's almost like they got them in like little, where do we put friend uses your bathroom? Like, what does that even, like, who even thought to put that anywhere?
We got numbers for that, trust me.
No.
Depends on the friend, how often you clean, and what the
Yeah.
bathroom is. How
I was
how big the
healthy.
van is, how many children. We have numbers for that.
Yeah, I was healthy, and then Jimmy shit in my bathroom, and now I got the Rona.
Oh, yeah, that's stuff aerosols. Be careful. You don't want to do that.
But you would think like visit an elder in their home would be like top of the food chain just because of the rate.
You got to be really careful
old
with vulnerable
people.
people in this. You got to be really careful with the vulnerable in your life. And then out of March, I think in April we'll have a lot better control by mid-April, early May, June. That time frame will start to get more control. But these next few months, it's like, oh my gosh.
And I think public pool, doesn't chlorine kill the Rona? You'd think that would be like the safest place on the planet.
It does. Unfortunately, it also and it's pretty moist, so that's a good thing.
That word's banned from the show, Fred.
Anyway, so these are the guidelines now, and my guess is that we'll have to start shutting down. I'd give it through middle of February, and all of a sudden a lot of this stuff is going to be red. So
so basically, if the rules relax on February 1st, dive in with both feet and make that money while you can, is what you're saying.
Or move to Toledo.
Yeah, or else do all the right things, and maybe you won't have the outbreaks, right? That would be ideal. If we
because I mean, cards on table. So like, one of the things that, just from my own personal perspective, we're starting to get, more and more shows that are wanting to be in studio as opposed to being remote.
Yep. So February is your window.
And we have. I mean, we've had probably. I think we've had. By the end of this month, we will have had 10 new shows start in studio.
Beautiful. Congratulations. That's
which, from a business perspective, great. But I mean, I'm also, no, we're not having. We're at half capacity in the studios, and 9 times out of 10, I get them up and running, and then I walk out of the studio. I've always got, the fan blasting on high, so it's running through the filtration system and filtering air as much as possible.
That's the thing you want to do, right? You want to say, we got the thing down. We want to keep it down. We have a much more dangerous mutation coming through the system. So let me do everything I can to possibly stop it, because if everyone feels scared, they're not going to come anyway. You can open up all you want, but if everyone says, gosh, who wants to have, it's too scary out there right now, and it'll hurt your business even more, and you're going to have to shut down a longer period of time. So
yes and no. It's like I was saying earlier. I mean, you will always have people that are willing to go out in person and that kind of stuff. But and there's a coin toss. There's the flip side of that where, I get people asking me, hey, should I still wear my mask in the studio? And I always say, look, here's the deal. My standard answer to that is no. That if honestly, as much as I swap out all the mic muffs and we clean everything and all that stuff, if you're genuinely that concerned about it, stay home and come in via Zoom.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of being in studio is to get that better sound quality. Yeah. And if you're wearing a mask over your face, it's that you might as well come in via Zoom and be safe, and be safe and be happy and be comfortable with it.
So your best shot for making hay, end of January through kind of end of February. After that, you're going to start to see the uptick again, and it's going to be challenging. Or not to shut everything down really fast. The time to buy plane tickets that are reimbursable, probably middle of March. Everyone will buy. At that point, you want to kind of reserve for September, because then the vaccines will kick in and be able to travel where you like. And then I shouldn't tell you all this stuff because it's not good epidemiology, but just practically that's what's going to happen.
Right.
So at any rate, so we decided to do things pretty complicated. We've got 2 allocations, as you guys know, right? Every day, the U.S. CDC gets, here's what Moderna produces, here's what Pfizer produces, pull it all together and say, okay, Michigan, you're about, you're 10 million of the 330 million population. You get your allotment based on that population, people, how many vulnerable you got. And then Michigan takes it and says, oh, let me really parse that out. And that makes sense, because you don't want to have this too centralized, right? You don't want to have like Washington trying to figure out what you should be doing up in Shiawassee Township. Right. So it makes sense what they're doing, but it's super complicated and it slows stuff down. And we're sitting here, on the verge of having a big mutation coming through and a big variant coming through that could, really could change the game. So, we tried to prioritize based on who's likely to be, who's going to be hospitalized, who cares for the sick, and who provides essential service. Those are the first priorities, and that's what we did. And I'll show you what that looks like. But you're going to have to expect discrepancies from state to state. Maybe that you're going to be better off getting vaccinated in Ohio. There's going to be a lot of gamesmanship going on. People will be sitting standby and getting, shots at 18. The guys at 80 who are 87 aren't getting their shots. There are no real-time feedback loops. Basically, we put on Tuesday, we get the hospitals say we want to have X number of doses. We think we can serve that many next week. On Thursday, that all gets sent in from the state. On Tuesday, the next week, the shipments all come in, and you don't know whether you're going to get 1,000 doses or 2,000 doses. And so then you got to scramble so you got the right people. So it's not, we don't have these real-time information that we really need to have. And of course, we got these allocations that are a little bit confusing and hard to sign up for. So we're having some challenges just getting the vaccines out. With that, let's take a look at how we decided to prioritize, right? First thing we looked at is how much seropositivity do we have? How many people who were sick are out there with antibodies that'll protect them? And the answer is, even though we've had this much death, and this is why Sweden didn't work, by the way, we're only about 10, we're slightly less than 10% of the people seropositive in the United States. So 10% of the people have had the disease and have a little bit of protection. 52, we think it's about 52% for 8 weeks. And the rest of us are still completely susceptible. Even though we've had, as many infections as we've had, even though we have as many deaths as we've had in the United States, that's what the numbers are. And that's why it's almost impossible to get through natural sicknesses and recovery to a herd immunity level, because you got to get to 70 to 80%. And you can see how much death and destruction we've had just by trying to get to 10%. So the next question was, okay, so we got to vaccinate some people. Who do we vaccinate first? The answer is we want to avoid overwhelming the hospital, because that's what kills people. The answer to the first question is who gets sick and goes to the hospital? People over 65. So let's vaccinate those guys first, because they're going to start.
Yeah, that was the whole point behind flatten the curve originally, was protect the hospitals.
Protect the hospital. So 65 and over, they'll get their vaccines first. Then the other thing was, turns out people of color are 3 to 4 times more likely to go to the hospital than white people. So better vaccinate those guys, because they're going to fill up your hospitals too. So they also are important. And frankly, there are a lot of our essential workers are in those categories. They're likely to be people of color, Hispanics, and so on. Those are a lot more, sadly, of the people who are face-to-face service people who are providing essential services are really critical to having us, up and running, are people of color. And so they're going to get the vaccinations first because they're more important. Then we got the people who are sick. And the answer is, if you've got a lot of multiple conditions, you are more likely to go to a hospital. If you've got diabetes, you're pretty high, you're in a bad risk category. If you've got diabetes and congestive heart failure, you're really likely to go to a hospital if you get COVID. So you want to get those guys vaccinated. The issue we've got is that people who have body mass indices of over 40%, and people who have diabetes are a lot more likely to have bad complications of COVID. And the truth is, they are also slightly less protected by the vaccine, or the dosing isn't quite as perfect for those people as we'd like it to be yet. We'll find out more, but sadly, there's a
great. Now we're going to get fat shamed by a vaccine.
So we'll have to make some adjustments and tweaks, and those are the kind of things that people are talking about. We may have to tweak the vaccine a little bit here when we get mutants and things like that. And those are some of the tweaks we're talking about. Next question was, okay, what kind of professions are getting sick? And you can see the people who are at more risk are on the right hand side. Who are less risk are on the left hand side. And then we also figured out how well they're being paid. But guess who's really in the crosshairs for COVID? That's registered nurses. The nurses are just getting absolute, and all the green. You can see how much green. Those are all the healthcare workers.
Right.
This is fine. Those guys get prioritized. And so that's how we prioritized. And now we decided, okay, we're going after the A1s and the B, and so we have phase 1, 2, 3, 4. In phase 1, it's about 20 million people who are in phase 1 across the whole United States. We're going through A, B, C of those. A are, as you know, from the CDC side, we're saying those are the people who are in nursing homes, because they were, sadly 40 times more likely to die than people who weren't. And those are healthcare workers. So easy to find, they're all localized, everyone's going to agree and consent, yes. So we're going to do those first, that's 1A. B is you're going to have some essential workers mixed into the mix, and then in phase C, 1C, you're going to have over 65s and 75s mixed into even older population, especially those with chronic conditions. That's the first phase, and we're partly through that. and the government's saying it's too complicated. We're going to open this up to anyone over 65, basically. And that's going to help get the vaccines out, because right now what's happened is we had a policy of holding back vaccines, and we weren't as ready as we should have been, so we didn't get all the consent forms signed, and so things are going more slowly than we wanted to. So we have more manufacturing than administration. Go ahead.
And I was gonna say, it isn't some like from one of the things I read, like they weren't necessarily accounting for okay, you get the shot and then somebody has to sit there and watch you for 15 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's a killer, right? You're supposed to do that with flu, but we've done it so often that we don't basically let's let people walk off.
Right.
But with this thing, it's new enough, and you got enough, questions about it that you want to have everyone sit there for 15, 20 minutes. And if you're vaccinating 100 people an hour, and you got to let 100 people wait for half an hour, you got 50 people milling around who could infect each other.
Right.
You could have a super spreader event right at the vaccination site, because we just saw on those curves that when you just got the day one of vaccination, you're just as susceptible as anybody who isn't vaccinated.
Yep.
And a lot of asymptomatics walking around it. So yeah, so that was also a miscalculation. And what the truth is in distribution is we're not very good at high volume vaccination. We're not set up for that. We're set up for onesie twosies at Walgreens and and CVS. We're not ready to vaccinate 1,000 people in a day.
Well, and you also said, I mean, I remember from our earlier conversations, you also have the complication with like the Walgreens and the CVSs of the world with the Pfizer vaccine because of the storage requirements.
Yeah, they don't have -70 degrees.
Right.
You're talking about a really high technology stuff there. So 3 options, right? The first option is we got problems with manufacturing. We'll take a look at that. Second option, we got problem with distribution. Third problem is we got problem with communication. One of those 3 things is bottlenecking is up. And right now it's distribution. We'll get into that. So our goal in December was 20 million vaccines. We actually shipped 12 million. We actually injected 2.7 million. Not really good. Now, Joe Biden says he wants to inject 100 million people in the first 100 days. We think that manufacturing will be at a 200 or so million dose per year run rate. So we could, that's not bad. We're on track for that. We think we can. Our absolute maximum is 125 million per year through the current system. We think we're going to be under that. We think it'll be around 100 million in that period, and it's more likely to be 75. So we still think that the bottleneck is likely to be distribution, which is disappointing. But that's where we think. And so here's what things look like. Manufacturing is really high tech. I mean, we're talking about little microscopic living very carefully constructed organisms that have to be cell cultured. Step 1 is you create a DNA template. The DNA template then is the template that allows the mRNA, the messenger RNA, to be synthesized on top of it, right? Well, to make a DNA template, you've got to do a lot of cell culture work, which is sort of black art. And it's all in living systems, right? You're not talking about mixing some chemicals and hoping for the best. You're talking about keeping things warm and letting cells do their thing, and oh my God! And then you got to linearize the whole thing, so you got to make them flat so they can reproduce. Then you put the whole thing on top of, then you culture it again with the DNA with all the RNA substrate, and you got to, by the way, replace there's some special things we're doing in order to create more stability. You're replacing certain amino acids, and you can see that on the bottom of the page, that is a very precise, exactly what you need messenger RNA. All those sequences, all those chemical bonds are have to be in the right place. They can't be mutated, otherwise it won't work. You've got to create stability factors you can see the 5' cap on the one side, on the left-hand side, and the polyadenosine on the other side. That leaves everything really stable. And then you ship all that to a new facility in Kalamazoo to actually, then you actually have to wrap that all up in lipids, in fat. And so you can see what the end result is. You got this really carefully manufactured, plasmid inside this lipid layer, completely encased in just the right proportions and just the right size. It can't be 150 nanometers. That's going to start to get collected and bollocked up in your liver and your kidneys. It can't be too small, because otherwise they won't recognize it as an antigen. And so it's got to be just that size, and it's got to be, so you're talking, and then you construct all that, you encapsulate all that, you formulate all that, and then you got to bring it and you got to fill it. And the filling stations all have to be sterile. And remember how we talked about that group, and so this is where things could really screw up. This is how you could get 6 adverse events and 21,000 vaccines, because you might have a little bit of DNA template left in your, you didn't purify quite right. Your lipid production may not have had quite the right size, so they could have a few adverse events there. Or probably most likely is that somehow in the sterilization process at Catalent, in this case in Indiana, they may not have been completely sterile, and that's what we're most worried about. So we've got a bad batch, a whole batch that went bad in the fill and finish process, and then you got to get, so that has all has to be super sterile. And sterile facilities are really hard to manage. You know, you got all sorts of, you know what it looks like. I mean, everyone's in white suits. You got the negative pressures. You got everything's being carefully washed, special water, deionized, everything. So, you know, that's complicated.
Mhm.
It took me 2.5 years to get some manufacturing sites qualified. Luckily, Catalent already has this in production. We'll see whether that was the problem or not. The other big problem is then you got to ship the thing at -70. And in the case of Moderna, it's -20. That's still pretty high technology capability, and that could have also gone bad, because all you've got in this thing, get this, is a fat cell, some salt, some water, and some messenger RNA. That's all that's in it. There's no preservatives, there's no adjuvants.
It sounds so simple.
No additives or preservatives. That's the good stuff.
There's nothing in there except basically, you know, saline solution and a little bit of fat and
A little bit of MSG.
Yeah, no, that's it. So,
And I guess, so I mean,
that's why you gotta
obviously,
preserve it.
like looking at this slide, I mean, my first question is there no way to do this all in one location? I mean,
Yes, it is possible to do in one location. The thing about Moderna is it's a new company, and so they didn't have any facilities, so they had to outsource it all, right?
Gotcha.
And then with Pfizer, they were already in complete production with their facility, but they couldn't afford all the capacity in all the different areas, so they had to freeze things up in certain areas, and certain capabilities are better in other places to do this in scale. So,
well, I mean, you know, they still got to keep pumping out Viagra. Let's be clear. I mean, that's, you know, priorities.
There are some necessities in life. Exactly right. So that's what it looks like, and that's why it has to be kept so cold, is because there's nothing in this except really pure stuff, and you want it. There's no preservatives, so that's why the cold chain is really critical.
Interesting.
And so here's what the manufacturers told OWS. They said we're going to be at about these levels of production, and right now, sure enough, you know, at the end of January, we will have about 50 million doses. From our best projections. We've already sent out 35 million. We have another 15 million are going to be done this month, this week, and we have 5 million in reserve and we're all going to release now. And so this is what we think it's going to look like. And you can see that by the time you get to April, what's going to happen is J&J should come on in March. If they do that in full blast, because they've got big facilities, right? They're already pretty scaled.
Yep.
That we should be able to vaccinate get at least one dose of one of these vaccines into almost 200 million people without even having another supplier come on board, which is pretty amazing. And as you get toward 200 million people, what happens is you start to get people who really don't want to be vaccinated. Thank you very much. Right?
Yeah.
There are about 65 million children. They can't be vaccinated. You got about 65 million people who think that COVID is a hoax, it's overblown. They're angry about things, and they don't believe these vaccines are that effective to begin with. A whole bunch of things that are causing people to be unhappy and angry about the whole situation. You can't blame them. It's a crappy situation. And then you got 30 million people who are really against vaccines generally. You add all those together, and then you look at how many people you need to get to herd immunity. Well, the old variant, we need about 280 million people. We need about 82%, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what you were saying. Yep.
For herd immunity. The reason you say that is you can see where herd immunity has occurred, like Taiwan, they've got about 82% people, you know, distance capability. And so I think we have to be about 280. Now with this new variant, we think we actually have to be closer to this should be up to 310. It should be 300 million people. We think about, so out of 330 million people we got in the United States, 90% are going to have to be vaccinated to really feel like it's
so what I'm hearing, Fred, is people should just shut up and stop talking about herd immunity, because I mean yeah.
Well, no, there will be herd immunity in certain bubbles in certain communities, and you can
right.
manage that, and we'll talk a little about that in a second. But you can get a sense of just how fast this should scale based on what the manufacturers told us. Now they may screw up, there may be, and you know, we've got to do a few things. We have to tweak a few things with fill and finish. We can get another 10% out of that because we're dripping now a little bit here and there. We're overfilling slightly with the Pfizer vaccine. We got a new we can switch in some new machinery that automates some steps. But fundamentally, this is what we think we can get to as being on the manufacturing side. So I don't think, if everything is true, what they're saying, we're going to have that much capacity issues compared to distribution. Distribution is going to be another story. And this was the question about the one dose. They weren't saying, let's just have one dose and call it a day. They were saying, let's have one dose and then come back.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully in the right time. But even if we're just a little bit off, it's still going to be better to have one dose and then 28, maybe it's 30 days, maybe it's 35 days, but it'll be in that range of still being acceptable to get that second dose. And the reason we said that is because of that ramp up. And what's going to happen is by the time we get to about 180 million doses that we need to do in the second round, that'll be kind of April to May. And at that point, we can come back to February, which is only, about 60 days old, and come back and vaccinate those next groups at a worst possible scenario. So if you do all the math, it turns out that if your one shot gives you 58% effectiveness, it's better to give yourself one shot and eliminate all the severe disease to avoid the hospitalization than to try to go through and get to 95% with two shots. And the reason we're saying that is because with two shots, we can only inject 86 million people. With one shot, we could do 140. So that becomes the math, right? If you can, and the break even there, 58% of 140 is the same as 95% of 86. That's the break even. And so if you do all the math,
you tracking with that, Bob? Is the math making sense for you, man?
No.
the 140 times 58 versus
carry the two.
Carry the two. There's a pi in there somewhere. There's
there's
like pi.
Be sure to put the E in there. We got exponential stuff.
Right.
So got some imaginary numbers in there. But basically, the worst scenario is that if we are truly at 52% effectiveness, which is what we came up with as the worst possible scenario for between doses of Pfizer, then we have 8.2 million excess deaths. But if we're at the 82% effectiveness of Pfizer through a longer period of time, then we're going to save 33 million people. So that's sort of what we're talking about in terms of the break even. And here are I did that also with a fairly advanced model that did Monte Carlo simulation, and I don't have that anymore. But basically, it came out to show you that you get a slightly better impact if you try to do the one dose scenario.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
Slightly better. And here, so vaccination rates, that really has to improve. Here's where we are in the United States. In Michigan, we're kind of in the middle of the pack now. We were in the bottom 20%. Now we're kind of in the middle of the pack. We're at about 46%. So on average, we're 47. I'm sorry, this is Michigan. No, this is Michigan right here. We had 773,000 shipped. We injected 364, 47% vaccination rate. That's about average for the United States. You can see that for the people who are really truly protected, only 0.5%. That's pretty crappy. So here is the distribution piece, and this is why this is so hard. We started out with about 35 million dose capacity in the United States. And Pfizer says that by the end of this year, they will be at a capacity of 2 billion doses. And Moderna says they're going to be at a capacity at the end of this year of 1.2 at the end of 2022. So it'll take some time, but basically by January 1st or so, they're going to be at 1 billion doses. We're scaling up a distribution system that has 35 available million doses to one that has almost 3.2 billion dose capacity to be shipped around
From a production standpoint, right?
Well, so production is 33.2 billion. Our capacity to distribute is 35 million at the beginning of last year, right? So you got to scale a little bit here.
That's a problem.
And so that's what we're facing, right? You got a completely unscaled, fragmented supply chain. You got everything super regulated in that space, right? And people are moving pretty slow with big players like Essen and guys who are used to working with Z'd out processes and very careful control systems and everything regulated by the FDA. Then you got manufacturing that's going to be changing quite a bit as new producers roll in, right? Moderna says -20, Pfizer says -70, J&J is going to be 2 to 8 degrees, and people are going to go, oh, a 1 dose versus 2 dose. You got this
Right.
and
Which
that.
which fridge and or freezer am I supposed to put this
Don't,
in?
don't shake, don't stir. You want to use this vaccinator for this vaccine for the other vaccine. You need to have 0.3 micrograms for this one, 100 micrograms for that one. And it's just like, oh my God. And then you got the logistics of minus 20 degrees. You've got the wastage. We have a 25% wastage, 20% wastage factor when you talk about these kind of ultra cold storage environments. Then you've got all these information systems that they've never talked to each other, and they never will. And a lot of it's on paper. And you just look at this thing and you go, holy cow, this is really going to be hard. And sure enough, we're having some challenges. And then you've got all sorts of questions about whether you have enough raw materials, not just for the vaccines that have really rare raw materials involved with them, but even things like dry ice, even things like stoppers, even things like the right kind of glass, the right kind of injectors, the right kind of reagents. All those things have to be enough, and then they have to be all mixed together at the right time. And the supply chains are super constrained. So that gives you a sense of some of the challenges in the distribution part of that. And sure enough, when you look at what's going through well, the states that are basically pretty low density states, like West Virginia, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, they're doing pretty well, because our biggest problem with distribution is actually trying to scale the high throughput sites. It's things like getting 5,000 people a day vaccinated through Ford Field. We're just not set up for that. We are set up to do 100 a day at the local Walgreens. But as far as getting a lot of people vaccinated fast, not
Again, open up those concert venues.
So
bring the staff back.
So actually, I'm working. I can't tell you too much about this, unfortunately, because it's still. But it's it deals with FEMA, it deals with the military, it deals with OWS. We're thinking about trying to get to a point where not having something in between the job shop of the Walgreens and the scaled operations of Ford Field. What would happen if we could put a factory on wheels? And we're looking at the military to help us do that right now.
The way drive-throughs, I'm just saying, get you a double cheeseburger, Popeye's chicken sandwich, throwing a vaccine in your arm.
There you go. 2 million served, right? How many million I served?
The way they run through those chicken sandwiches.
Hey, there was just some place in the news today here in Michigan, some dispensary that said, they're trying to organize a pot for a shot promo event where hey, they're going to set up a vaccination thing, and you get a free pre-rolled joint with every vaccination.
Hey, it'll take the sting out of that vaccine.
Exactly.
So that you may have some adverse effects from the, but we'll have, the other thing that really works is lotteries. And I've been in a lot of these countries where they say we're going to put a big pool. Everyone, we'll throw a big pool of. This is like Nigeria. Every time a shot gets done, a dollar gets dropped into the pool. The end of a year, one lucky guy gets $10 billion. And I'll tell you, the vaccination rates go from like 20% to 80%. That's overwhelming.
Course, yeah.
So we can just there are carrot opportunities all over the place in this space to get the people vaccinated. At any rate, we think that these mobile units are a good way to go. It's on the table now with the new administration. We'll see whether that happens. There are a whole bunch of positives to it. It's a little bit too early to say whether they're actually going to do this, but this is something the military could do. National Guard, in Michigan, they should organize the National Guard more effectively. And I think they would get this out better. Here's the analysis that we did. This is Monte Carlo simulation. We did over 1,000 simulations. You can see the difference between 1 dose and 2 dose. Again, 2 dose is slightly more variable. You get a bad lag effect here, kind of around the middle of the year. This is the best possible scenario. But you can see that hump I was worried about, right? The gray shows that you got a peak in kind of late January, then we start dropping back down again, and then we get that next peak where it comes back up again to the variant, and that's really scary for us. So that's what we're worried about. Anyway, we think that we're going to have issues with a few of the different segments out there. We call these skeptical laggards. These are the people who don't want to take the vaccine right away. They want to be second, third, fourth. They let Joanne do it first.
I freely admit I'm right there.
We think we can convince people like yourself over the course of the year.
It won't even take a year. Like I said, I just give it a few months. And I'm in.
completely reasonable. You want to see what happens to the normal person out there. So we think we can convince eventually. Then there's some angry disbelievers. We don't think we can do much with the angry disbelievers. We think their minds are pretty much made up. They don't really want to take the test. Then we have the cultural resistors. These are people of color who, and frankly, we've made some really bad mistakes with the healthcare system, and they are rightfully reserved. But we think we can convince slowly but surely about half of those. And then we have the anti-vaxxers, and there's no way they're not going to take the vaccine. So when you look at the total resistance, we think we're going to probably be kind of at about a 60% willingness rate across the United States. 60% are willing to take. But we know that we need to get about 82% to take the vaccine to get herd immunity. So, and we have about 10% who are probably going to be sick. So that we're still 12% away from herd immunity, which means it's going to be patchy, right? You're going to have some places herd immunity, some places other not herd immunity. I don't think we're going to quite make it, especially with this new variation though. When you throw in the new variation, that really pushes you toward being 20% off.
Right.
And I don't think we're going to win the battle, at least not this coming year for full herd immunity. Here's the way the United States looks as far as willingness to take a vaccine. And you can see that luckily, Wisconsin is pretty willing, as much willing to take the vaccine as we are, but Indiana, Ohio, Chicago, Pennsylvania, Illinois, we're surrounded by states who don't really want to take this vaccine. They're down
What's
there.
the very likely? Is that Ann Arbor or that's
Washtenaw County? Yeah.
Washington, yeah.
They already have the mutant in place, so they started saying, "Sign me up."
Right.
Up in the UP, we've got some people who want Saginaw County, who's the most resistant, and they're probably going to be around 55%.
I mean, if you switch that yellow to red, this map would look pretty similar to another map that is common for this country.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but
just an observation.
Just putting that out there, yeah.
Yeah.
I say, who did this study? MSNBC, perhaps?
No. This was done
CNN, Bob.
This was done at Carnegie. This is done at Carnegie Mellon. They did this did a survey of, I think it's plus or minus 2%, kind of with 15,000 recipients. They actually did every county, and they went through it. They're pretty diligent about this. And man, I hadn't thought of that. I didn't realize Louisiana was possibly that red. I thought Texas was redder, but Texas is, I guess they're turning purple. Yeah, it's sort of. I'm gonna have to now. I want to go do an overlay. I'm curious. Yeah,
it's all the people that fled California because of the taxes and the laws that go to Texas and then still vote the same way. Yeah.
I hadn't realized that. That is pretty wild, isn't it? Ooh, wow. Well, Georgia just turned blue, didn't they officially? So that would be an out. Well,
yeah, barely. Yeah,
barely. Wow. But yeah, it's interesting. It does follow political lines a little bit, more than a little bit.
Interesting.
Wow, great point. I just pulled this up today. This is the first time it's been published. So
no, it doesn't match, because if you go back like the upper Midwest and like the South is like very no, and it's the whole upper Midwest is a lot yes. So yeah, I don't think it does match. It might be, but who knows?
Like I said, it'd be interesting to do an overlay and just
Yeah, so like, you wonder about causality, maybe.
Well, you have causation and then you have coincidence, but
exactly,
it'd be interesting. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's so the way that we're really going to lose this is actually social media. The reason that I think we're going to really miss this is social media. And so right now, this is a shot of 1,300 views that followed 85 million people through the question about vaccinations generally. And this is in 2019. This is before COVID, but you can see that basically there are two big groups. The first group is the people who are scientists and vaccination advocates generally, right? And then there's another group that's anti-vax, and they are against vaccinations. And then there's a much larger group, kind of about 50% of the population, who are really trying to figure things out. They're not really sure, but you can see that generally the anti-vaxxers are pulling more of the green over to them and the blue are over to them. So the fight is for that middle, the hesitant, right? The people who are sort of on the edge, not really sure. On the advocacy side, what happens is that the scientists feel an ethical obligation to tell the truth. And we always talk about things like, there's a 20% chance this will happen, there's an 80% chance. We never really talk in absolutes. There's always a chance that something else will happen. Everything's sort of an experiment. Things take a long time to figure things out. we're not very, we're sort of in our little silos. The epidemiologists talk to epidemiologists, virologists talk to virologists. They don't talk to each other.
Right.
And so we're in our little silos, and we're not very attentive to what the public really thinks. We say we have our data, the numbers will talk. They will convince people. And of course, so, they're not going to be terribly, they're not going to win this war, right? They're not going to be very, the anti-vaxxers, on the other hand, they really are super emotional. They engage you emotionally. They've got lots of partners. If you touch a site that's sort of on childhood nutrition, you're going to get invited to an anti-vax site, almost 100%. They've got lots of scale. They're motivated, and they are focused on trying to convince the undecided to come over to them. And basically, the undecided are sitting there in the middle. They don't really trust the institutions. They're hearing a lot of conflicting opinions. They want to have, and they're constantly hitting that refresh button. What's happened today? And the truth is, not much happens in science today, but a lot of happens in I mean, it's amazing how much stuff happens. Aliens have landed in Wisconsin. I don't know. Where stuff happens every day on the anti-vaxxers. So at any rate, and the real problem is that this quote, this is a quote from a Facebook executive. 2/3 of the time, this is from a study, that a user joins an extremist group on Facebook, it's because our algorithms actually recommended that extremist group. So there is just a lot of, so they're going to be attracted over to us. What was interesting is that it turns out that there's a group in the UK that actually monitors what's going on. It's not in the US. In the US, they actually look at how much false information, demonstrably false information, is flowing through the internet. And on average, let's guess how much false information. Talk about.
I'm going better than 50%. It has to be.
No, not a percentage, about the volume, the Bob's number. What's the number? 100 now, per hour.
Gosh, I'll throw, I don't know, 250,000.
Wow. No, it's about 10,000 demonstrably incorrect stuff flowing through per hour on average. And interestingly, on the day of and the day before the reason I know this is because there was a big publication that said on the day of, this is Wall Street Journal, so not, it wasn't a scientific journal or anything, and it wasn't terribly, it's very conservative, so, not terribly radical or anything. They said, because the numbers went up to 40,000 per hour, they decided to shut down, Donald Trump's account and a few other things, because it was just the amount of false.
We actually talked about that earlier on the show. Where they they noted what a drastic nosedive that number took after they blocked his account.
Yeah, about 37%, as I recall, something like that. I'd be interested in the numbers, because I'm looking at this closely, because I'm interested in the anti-vax movements as something that we have to sort of think about in terms of achieving herd immunity. So the biggest issue, as you know, is that basically these sites, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Medium, Reddit, all those groups, basically their job is to sift through all the information. And they got these algorithms, and basically the two big algorithms. One puts you into here, we understand something about you. Here's someone who's like you, and here's what the person who's like you likes to look at. Therefore, we're recommending these things to look at. The other type of algorithm actually is one that doesn't even require they know anything about you. They can just start to say, we notice that your location is now Chicago. It was St. Louis. Here's all the new restaurants in Chicago, and then see if they have a click, and they like that. And then they don't even have to know anything about you, and they can start to direct stuff in your direction. The problem is that if you're talking about health stuff, it turns out who says something matters. If you have a PhD or an MD, chances are you're probably going to be more informed than someone who doesn't have those degrees.
Go figure.
Go figure. And unfortunately, the internet engines don't really look at that. They look at how many memes and how popular the sex idea is, and how interesting it is, and how many hits you get, and
how many followers you have.
It doesn't matter whether you're qualified in any way or not. So it turns out that in this game, the pro-vax leaders are going to lose it. There's no way they can win this game, right? And this is where the battle for hearts and minds and deciding whether you're going to take the vaccine or not, and achieving herd immunity is really going to happen. We're at that range where that extra 20% that the anti-vaxxers are being convinced not to take the vaccine, or to not take that second dose, or not be as vigilant as normal, is going to make a big difference.
Well, I mean, and that's a sad, just general reality, isn't it? That I mean,
Yeah.
emotion will almost always trump logic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, the other big thing is we are programmed to think that if we do something, it's risky. That's our you know, if you go out and you hunt for a mastodon, you know, you're gonna, you know, those guys didn't come back as often as the guys who
Right.
waited for the mastodon to come for them. You know? And so we
Well, it's again, it's the Bob theory. Either I can wake up at 5 or 4 in the morning and go fishing, or I can wake up at noon and the fish will be there.
That's right. That's right. So it turns out that you're kind of naturally thinking that if I do something, it's risky. In this case, actually, not vaccinating is a lot riskier than vaccinating, but it's not part of our mindset or thinking, and then that it really makes a big difference. So at any rate, we're probably going to lose this. And what's interesting is the U.S. is not alone in this. In this, we're kind of in the middle as far as vaccination plus, vaccination minus. France is a disaster. You can see it's just off the charts bad. China, meanwhile, they're all saluting and saying, yes, let's take the vaccine. I can't tell you how much challenge I had, you know, trying to introduce meningitis vaccines and other parts of the world because of the traditional medicines, the witch doctors, and so on in Africa and so on. There's a lot of resistance to vaccination and new medicine and change of any kind in all countries. And so,
Okay, why honestly, the first thing that just jumped out at me, why is it that everybody except the US
yes, we're an outlier. You're right.
There were more people that said yes in October than did in December.
Isn't that
other
wild?
than us?
I don't know is the answer. I don't know. It's really interesting. I think it's because we had basically the U.S. bet big on vaccines. I mean, we had by far, sort of sadly, we were the worst impacted by COVID because we didn't use traditional measures as well as others. And there were a few mistakes that we made here and there. So we knew that if vaccines worked, we would rise in stature. I think, and competitively on an international basis, we bet on vaccines. We made a big bet on vaccines. It was a long shot bet, and it came through. And when that happens, you're sort of proud of that, right? I mean, hey, and so we were the only country in the world really that bet this heavily on vaccines, you know, and it came through. And we knew that it was coming through October, November, December. That's when we had the announcement. So that's the only thing I can think of that makes this different. Does that make sense? Yep. I don't know. That's my theory.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, like I said, that's the first thing that jumped out at me when I was looking at it. So yeah,
this is wild. This is a survey of over 15,000 people around the world, and you're right. U.S. is an absolute outlier. It's the only one that moved positive. So that's a good sign. You know, maybe we're on our way. And so basically, there are three scenarios I think are going to happen, right? We're going to so the gray line indicates what's happening if we don't have a vaccine. And that's not a good situation, right? We're going to go through peaks and valleys and cycles and highs, and we will have over 1 million people dying of the vaccine over 2 years of COVID over 2 years without a vaccine, well over 1 million. Now the purple line is if everything goes perfectly, and we know already we're off track for that. So we know we're going to be somewhere between that purple line and the gray line. And the question is, what's the most likely scenario? And I think we'll know a lot in October. Around Halloween, we'll know whether or not we've got a vaccine that is capable of being really transformative, or whether or not the virus is able to make adjustments, have mutations, and escape the vaccine slightly, so that we're going to have ups and downs for some time. So that's sort of where we are in terms of the best and worst scenarios. And what I did is I said, so what is a case where the vaccine works? And the case the vaccine works is you're going to have a peak, and it's going to come down, and it's going to stay down. And that's the best. And that requires that we have. This is for a perfect vaccine. This is for a vaccine that doesn't allow transmission at a 65% plus rate. It's still 95% effective in symptomology. That we have 60% of people taking it. That we have no more emergent strains. The virus behaves. Everything works perfectly, and you can see that kind of by the end of next year, we're down at a nice steady state level that's probably going to be very livable. It's going to feel like we're going to, kind of lose maybe 80,000 people a year. That's manageable, and that's something that's in the range of the flu, worse than the flu, but in the range of the flu. It's something we can live with.
It's at least more comparable than what's going on now.
Absolutely, right. So, but the question was, under what situations could this not be the case? Because right now we've got one of the best vaccines ever, period. I mean, we have a really good vaccine. So if it turns out the vaccine, so what was necessary for us to move back into a situation where it wasn't so good? And the answer, sadly, isn't too much. The first thing has to happen is that the immunity isn't lasting very long. The second is the vaccine refusal is about 50%. Right now, it's about, right now, vaccine refusal is about 60%. I'm sorry, it's about 40%.
Right.
So it has to increase by 20%. That the second dose compliant is average. Believe it or not, when we require more than one dose of a vaccine, you've got to take 2 doses or you're not protected. Half the people won't come back for the second dose. So if we're average,
Right.
I'm just telling you, I know it's impossible to believe, but yeah, this is really how it happens. So if we are average, right now, I'm sorry, it's 54%. So 46% of people don't come back for their second dose on average. If we are sort of at that rate, slightly worse than that rate, and that we start to get tired out. That you can see that 2021 goes through some peaks, and then 2022 is actually a worse year than 2021, and a very large, devastating peak. And it happens, and that cycle occurs over and over again, with a very high, tight, high peak of deaths, then descending very rapidly, back in control again. High peak of deaths, descending back in control.
So not just thinking about, like, that's very Spanish flu-like, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And unfortunately, because this is more, it's about as transmittable as the Spanish flu. The new variant is about as transmittable as Spanish flu, but this is more deadly.
Gotcha.
So yeah, actually, it's very similar to Spanish flu. Even the death rate's about is quite similar. So, so it doesn't take that much to tip us over the edge. Is all I'm saying. So suppose we are in between. We've got some areas of herd immunity, some areas of non-herd immunity, right? You're protected, unprotected, and you're moving between these environments. Well, if you've been vaccinated, you're pretty safe. But if you haven't been vaccinated, you really got to worry, because if you're working at an airport, if you're working near from an airport, someone flies in from Mexico, or you have a much lower level of vaccination, for example. I'm not saying Mexico will or won't, but another country with a lower level of vaccination, that person becomes asymptomatic, and they can easily transmit it to you. We've got too much international travel, too much work, moving in and out of different bubbles, some of which are protected and not. So as someone who doesn't take the vaccine, you're going to have to really be really careful in order to remain protected in this environment. If you do take the vaccine, you will be protected at 95%, at least for a while, and that's fabulous. There is still a 5% chance you're going to get the disease. Now, if you're not transmitting, then you don't have to you can start not wearing your face mask and still not worry about transmitting for people. That we're still finding out if that's the case. But you're still going to have bubbles, right? You're going to have bubbles at home, and so you're going to have to test your antigen levels to make sure that you don't have an active case. You're going to have to do serology testing to see what your antibody levels are every once in a while to make sure you're still protected and make sure that the vaccine's still working. You're probably going to have to take some boosters every once in a while. You're going to be much more aware of when you get into situations that you're not comfortable with, like, gosh, this Myers feels really crowded right now. Maybe I don't want to go in, or that conference room doesn't look like it's very well done. You'll start to get a lot more aware of what's going on, just like today. When before 9/11, after 9/11, what's that guy doing with that funny bag?
Yeah.
You're starting to get you're just getting more aware. A little bit, it'll be different. Work venues. You'll probably come into work. You probably have to take a temperature test. You'll probably have to say whether you've been vaccinated or not. If you haven't been vaccinated, you'll probably have to take regular tests for whether or not you've got an active virus or not. There'll be new distancing. There'll be new detection systems in place. There may be some dogs that sniff you out. There may be some new, everyday kind of tests you're taking on saliva based. Then you move to the community state level. They'll be aggregating what's happening at the workplace, what's happening at all the venues, what's happening at the bars, figuring out whether there's overall temperature rise for, oh gosh, Lapeer, it looks like we're, 0.3 degrees higher in degrees Fahrenheit for average temperature. People out there, maybe they're having an outbreak. They'll be doing a lot more work with sewage and figuring out whether we're getting new variants and strains. We're going to be testing genetically a lot more to understand. There'll be a lot more active surveillance. So that'll be at the community level. And this is, again, between the time where everyone's vaccinated, having herd immunity versus not. I think it's going to be a year or two. And then nationally, there'll be a big difference between countries that are looking at control versus eradication. Eradication strategies. You come into China, you're going to get a special passport. You're going to be asked to sign in everywhere you go with that passport. Same thing with Australia. If you turn out to be positive for a virus, you're going to be in quarantine and probably be sent home. That kind of level of restraint versus just trying to remain in control. You probably need to get a test before you fly, get a test when you land, and then when you come back, another set of tests. And then there'll probably be agreements about what you're going to need in order to get in and out of certain countries. So with that, here's the personal level management. You're going to need to understand what's going on, and you'll have to manage your bubbles on a personal basis. So if you want to go to the bingo club, you'll probably want, they'll say, well, in order to come to our club, we want to make sure you have vaccine, plus you've got an active test, and you want to have a serology test that's less than 4 months old. You say, okay. And then if that bingo club starts to have outbreaks, you're going to say, I don't want to go to that bingo club. Maybe go to the other bingo club because this doesn't have the outbreaks. Right? You'll start to monitor, and these little bubbles will have ways of testing, right? Then you have your group test bubble. Sometimes bubbles will burst because they'll have a big outbreak, and you'll start to manage that. And eventually, I think there'll be some ways of us doing that actually with some electronics, and especially in other countries. You'll have a lot of these kind of electronics available. And then we'll start to roll that all up into national and international. Today, what we do is we actually do testing like this is what England did. And this report just came out last week. And they said, we were all worried about China in January, and we shut down all travel to China. We said, no more Chinese travelers coming in. And you can see that basically, we did that in January, and you know what? We killed off the China virus. There's no more China virus. Unfortunately, we had a few big groups going to Venice. They came back.
Right.
So it turned out at that point we should have shut everything to Venice. We didn't detect that. Sorry about that. And then Spain came through. Then a little bit later, we all went to Spain because it was a little warmer down there. We got cold, miserable in England. We all went to Spain, and it just blew up. And we're really sorry, China, that we completely screwed up our trade relations with you for all those years. We didn't allow anyone to come in. Had international problems. But today we can tell you we're terribly sorry. That wasn't the case at all. That's what we were doing, and England did. And this report just came out a week ago. And now we can actually say, guess what? There's a new variant. It's B1.1.7. We have it. It's this much more, it's this much more contagious. We have this many flights going to these different places in the country. So let's start to test in those areas and talk to these people about what they're seeing in those countries, right? Now we're starting to get proactive. In the past, we could say, oh, this is sort of where the United States is today, right? We could tell you, oh, 7 months ago, we had this problem. It turns out it was a bad problem. We had COVID. And we said, no kidding. You know what? Why didn't we try to about now? Oh, right. So we're not set up for that, right? That's the difference between monitoring and acting. So,
all right, so I want to be smart. We're coming up on midnight.
Oh my God. So I should just tell you really quickly.
Yes.
I should just tell you really quickly the forecast. We're coming up on midnight. Holy cow.
We really are. Yeah, that's
okay. So at any rate, I think that this is what we're going to look like this year. We're going to have a scare in March. We're going to have peaks of 450. I think by April we'll be coming back down again. Vaccine will start to kick in. 608,000 total people. 50 extra thousand deaths. That's as many people as died in combat in Vietnam War ago. Just think about that. And here's the new variants. We'll be 160,000 deaths a day. By this point, by the way, we'll be 608,000 deaths. That's a lot of deaths. When you look at that in context, we're getting to the point of killing off as many people by April as have been killed off in combat in every war we fought. And if you look at the excess deaths, it's even higher than that already.
right.
So with that, here's what things look like. We're right now at about 1 or 2% overall vaccination rates. and we've got a little ways to go. So if you want, I can come back in a little bit and tell you how we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like these are always crazily like informative, like that. Yeah, I mean, and that's why I love these, is because the brain dump. I feel like, okay, now, well, because again, like, okay, now I know, like, because I have every expectation now that you're going to see a flurry of activity in bars and restaurants and that kind of stuff, and it's almost going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy where everybody's going to go nuts that first week of February.
Yep.
Guess what? By the time the end of February, March rolls around, you're going to see that super spike, huge, influx of cases.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's going to happen, and it's just the nature of the beast. We don't want to, have our lives run by this little virus, but the truth is that it's still dangerous out there. Hopefully, the vaccines will kick in though, kind of June, July, August timeframe. Really start to see a decrease, and then by next fall, for this next school year, we'll Halloween, Thanksgiving will be a lot more normal, unless we see this mutant come up. And we should know that in October whether that mutant is causing us problems or not.
Crazy.
But yeah, I thought we'd be done talking about this last March. April.
One could have only hoped that. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, Fred, again, seriously,
Pleasure.
thank you so much for taking the time to advocate. And by all means, email that to me. I will get it out with the show notes and everything else for people to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the time you spend educating us on this stuff is invaluable to me, and I
Well,
get a lot of great feedback from people that as much as it freaks them out, they look forward to it and value it as well. So
we've got a couple of great vaccines. I hope they hold. I hope they're durable. I hope they remain efficacious. If they do, we'll be in much better shape. And there's a small chance that we have some leakage and some escapes. And if we let that go out of control, it'll be, we'll be back in the soup. So hopefully we'll know that soon.
Yeah, yep. And I had some leakage during the show, but I hit the mute button. So just...
Nice. All right. So yeah, and obviously, you can find Fred at fredbrown.com. Check him out there. Us, worditandthed.com. Bob, do your thing. Take us out. Yeah,
it's going to wrap things up for episode 383 and 384 of the IT and the D show. I'd like to thank Fred Brown, fredbrown.com. On behalf of Bob, Dave, and Randy, do us a favor. Drink up your drinks. Get your phone numbers. You don't got to go home. You just got to get the hell out of here. See you next week. Drive careful. Beat it.
See you guys.
Thanks, Fred.